Chapter 747. Ling Xian and the rest soon received the news that the Holy Qilin King had died in battle. The Void Spirit Divine Sect requested him to join the Divine Qilin Sect and the kingdom to capture Yi Qinghan. The three organizations suspected that Li Sha had disguised himself as a young man to assassinate the three powerhouses. The kingdom founding ancestor, the Holy Qilin, and the Void Spirit Divine Sect's Grand Elder had come personally to suppress the Great God Sect. However, Li Sha was in the sect. He pretended to be curious as he looked at the half-step lords from the three organizations. He said in surprise, "What are you doing, fellow cultivators? Did the Great God Sect offend you again? Where's that old man, Wen Zheng?" The Holy Qilin was not in a good mood. He questioned coldly, "Why are you calling me? Holy Qilin, is your brain squashed by a door? Or did you eat gunpowder and explode?" Wen Zheng hovered in the air and appeared outside the Great God Sect. He asked coldly, "Have you been in the sect all this time?" Kingdom founding ancestor Qing Lai asked with a frown. "Where else could we be if not in the sect? If you're unhappy with the Great God Sect, we'll fight. There's no need to find excuses every day. If we really fight today, the Great God Sect will cease to exist. Your sects and kingdoms will be gone too." Li Sha said coldly, "It's a misunderstanding. Fellow cultivators, please don't be angry. The Void Spirit Divine Sect's Jian Lingshu and the Holy Qilin King of the Divine Qilin Sect have both died a few days apart. According to our investigation, a young man entered the secret zone and asked about Qing Shenluo and the others' whereabouts. It's only been a few days and two of them have died." Qing Lai said in a deep voice. "What does this have to do with us?" Li Sha asked unhappily. "Because that young man is only on perfected middle rank. We're worried that a half-step lord has disguised himself as him. That's why we're here to ask." "I believe both of you can understand," Qing Lai said with a sigh. Li Sha was genuinely shocked. He was not faking it because he did not expect Yi Qinghan to kill the Holy Qilin King so soon after killing Jian Lingshu. Unfortunately, Qing Lai and the rest misunderstood the real reason for Li Sha and Wen Zheng's surprise. The three of them retreated. Li Sha and Wen Zheng smiled and turned to leave. Soon, Yi Qinghan's image was sent out of the secret zone. The three half-step lords looked at Yi Qinghan's portrait and clenched their fists. They mobilized all the spies from the three organizations and began investigating Yi Qinghan's true background. Many spies appeared in the territory of the Great Path Divine Sect. They focused on the territory of the Great Path Divine Sect and soon found Qin Town. Then, they followed them to Deyuan City and even found the house where Qin Wenyan and Qin Chust were staying. Boom! The sacred Qilin smashed the table with its fist and roared, "It was indeed those two old men who did this. We don't have any evidence. The two of them can push all the blame away. Send someone to capture the two children. I'll have Yi Qinghan deliver them to you." Qing Lai controlled the kingdom of God. How could he succeed without intelligence? Instead of looking for Yi Qinghan in the arcane realm, he might as well let him appear and send himself to death. Yi Qinghan had no idea where Qing Shenluo was, so he could only wander around the border of the central region. However, the divine bird noticed that something was off behind them. It felt like someone was following them. "Master, don't you think someone's following us?" The divine bird asked curiously. Yi Qinghan frowned. He found it strange as well, so he began walking back. Ling Xian and the rest had gathered more than 130 powerhouses by then. They were confident that no matter how powerful Yi Qinghan was, it would be impossible for him to defeat so many people. Whether it was the sacred Qilin King, Jian Lingshu, or even Qing Shenluo, it would be impossible for them to kill more than 100 powerhouses by themselves. Therefore, they were still looking for Yi Qinghan. They traveled through the mountains continuously, but they did not notice a pair of eyes staring at them from the top of a tall mountain. Yi Qinghan looked from afar and saw the group of people. He also saw Hua Xinyang tied to a wooden stick. She looked miserable and her clothes were disheveled. If it were not for the God-binding chain, she would have been exposed. "Isn't that the girl we asked for directions from? She was implicated by you?" The divine bird asked curiously. Yi Qinghan looked at the 100+ experts and pondered. Seeing Hua Xinyang die because of him, His Tao heart would not be able to bear it. If he were to step in and save her, these 100+ high gods would definitely turn him into a pile of ashes. Soon, Yi Qinghan looked up at the divine bird and said coldly, "Think of a way to kill this group of people for me. Isn't that simple? When night falls, we will put some flesh and blood that is full of vitality at the place where they are stationed. Then, we will let the Pai Xiu lead the group of beasts and create a beast tide. We will be able to trample them to death." The divine bird said with disdain, "That girl was implicated because of me. Isn't it a little inappropriate to kill them all?" Yi Qinghan frowned and asked, "Isn't this silly dragon a spatial divine beast? Let's just take her out during the chaos. Once a beast tide happens, who will care about a girl?" The divine bird laughed wickedly. It would be a spectacular scene to imagine more than 100 powerhouses being surrounded by countless beasts. Yi Qinghan ordered the god-slaying eagle to follow this group of people and left quietly with the Pai Xiu. The sky was not dark yet. Yi Qinghan and the Pai Xiu found a large number of mutated divine beasts. When the Pai Xiu roared, the divine beasts' legs went soft. How would they dare to fight? The divine bird was known as the 10,000 Beasts Divine Emperor. It was proficient in many beast languages. Soon, they communicated with each other. These divine beasts knew that Yi Qinghan only wanted them to create a beast tide to attack some humans. They agreed readily. Hundreds of the strongest divine beasts in the central region were gathered. They betrayed each other and told Yi Qinghan all the powerful divine beasts they knew. Yi Qinghan found thousands of divine beasts in half a day. They were all 5th-grade beasts with strong vitality. The only one they were afraid of was the Pai Xiu. This Pai Xiu was the son of a real chaos dragon. Although it was very weak now, its aura was something that even divine beasts were afraid of. Under the lead of the Pai Xiu, more than 1,000 divine beasts followed Yi Qinghan to the location of the colorful snake. They tried to keep their voices as low as possible so as not to alarm anyone. Ling Xian and the others raised firewood and scattered the feces or dragon bones of the powerful divine beasts around them. This deterred the divine beasts from approaching. After several days of not finding Yi Qinghan, Ling Xian became impatient. He vented his anger on Hua Xinyang. The tip of his tongue touched the corner of his mouth. He smiled sinisterly and said, "Take off the iron chain on her." Hua Xinyang was in despair. If she could kill herself, she would not hesitate. Unfortunately, she could not even do it under Ling Xian's eyes. Master Ling, shall we find a good place for you to enjoy?" Some young disciple smiled and said flatteringly. "And, go ahead." Ling Xian said indifferently. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the heaven and earth rumbled. The sky was occupied by powerful birds. Pairs of dark green eyes could steal one's soul. "Uncle Master?" The young disciple turned his head, and his face turned purple. His legs were trembling. He had never seen so many terrifying beasts blocking the valley. The sky was also occupied by flying beasts. This was truly a situation where there was no way to go up and no way to go down. Just when everyone was panicking, Yi Qinghan suddenly appeared. He grabbed Hua Xinyang's waist and left before anyone noticed. "You guys should enjoy the pleasure of being killed. If you want to rape a woman, I don't think you have the chance anymore." Yi Qinghan left the valley with the panicking Hua Xinyang in his arms. Chapter 748. Ling Xian and the others went crazy. They had never seen a beast tide in a secret territory. So many beasts were attacking them instead of killing each other. More than 1,000 mutated divine beasts and giant desolate beasts threw themselves into the valley. Some people's bodies weren't strong enough and were actually crushed to death. Ling Xian had just risen into the air and wanted to leave when he was surrounded by a group of flying beasts. His body was torn apart and his blood dyed the heavens. A great flame lit up the sky. It was actually so bitter. Once a beast tide happened, the human gods were so weak. Yi Qinghan felt a chill down his spine. Hua Xinyang felt weak all over. She looked at more than 100 people screaming in the valley. In the time it took for an incense stick to burn, more than 100 high-level gods died tragically. As for the peak mid-level gods, they didn't even have a chance to struggle before they died. With so many people dying at once, There was no way to hide it even if they wanted to. The Void Spirit Divine sect flew into a rage and began to retaliate. They gave the order to kill Qin Chusong and Qin Wenyan, preparing to fight Yi Qinghan to the death. That morning, a few young talents quietly appeared in Deyuan City. Their goal was clear: to kill Qin Chusong and Qin Wenyan in the courtyard that Yi Qinghan bought. The Great Divine Sect ignored the existence of the two children and didn't take any protective measures. They allowed the four young people to approach the courtyard. At this moment, Qin Chusong was still cultivating, but he was only at the Fate Palace level. He was like an ant in front of a high-level god. Killing him would be as easy as blowing off dust. Qin Wenyan was a 4-year-old child. He couldn't even walk properly. How could he expect her to survive? The two maids were low-level gods, but they didn't even have a chance to speak in front of a high-level god. The four young people didn't choose to do it during the day. Instead, they chose an inn and waited for the night. Time passed and the scouts found that there was a formation around the courtyard. Even if they wanted to kill the two at night, they would have to alert the disciples of the Great Divine Sect. By then, it would be impossible to escape. What should we do? There's no need to implicate all of us in the assassination of the two children. We have to kill them quietly and escape quickly. By the time the Great Path Divine Sect comes to their senses, we'll be out of Deyuan City. They won't be able to do anything to us. A young man said in a deep voice. Then we'll have to think of a way to lure them out. I've seen that array formation. It's impossible to silently attack, another person said. Just as the four experts were discussing, a scout quietly appeared in the inn and knocked on the door. Master, there is news. The two children were brought out by the two maidservants. They are now in the God Treasure Pavilion, the spy said in a low voice. The four of them looked at each other and revealed cruel smiles. Since they took the initiative to deliver themselves to us, it would be a waste if we don't seize this opportunity. If we kill these two kids, we can get 100,000 high-grade items. This is the highest price an ordinary person has ever offered, the leader of the group said coldly. Although the price is high, it won't be easy to take it. If we kill under the eyes of the Great Path Divine Sect, we might not be able to walk out alive, a young man said with a bitter smile. No worries. I'll do it. You guys just stay alert. After I succeed, I'll leave Deyuan City immediately. You guys can pretend to be travelers and enter the God Treasure Pavilion. We'll meet at the Great Desert Mountain when it's dark. After the leader made his decision, he led the three towards the God Treasure Pavilion. The God Treasure Pavilion could be considered a major force. It had good relations with many parties. No one dared to make a move inside the pavilion. The four of them wandered around the periphery, waiting for Qin Chusong and Qin Wenyan to come out. The leading youth appeared in the main hall of the Divine Treasures Pavilion. He stared at the dazzling, golden hall, and the divine treasures and divine pills everywhere. He couldn't help but drool. However, every single divine pill required a large number of high-grade divine crystals. Ordinary high god priests couldn't afford them at all. He casually inquired about the price of the divine treasures. His eyes wandered around, waiting for Qin Wenyan to appear. The two maids didn't know that someone dared to make a move in Deyuan City. At this moment, they were walking around with the two children. They had a large amount of divine crystals and wanted to buy some divine treasures for the children to cultivate. However, Qin Wenyan was curious about everything. He ran around the second floor of the God Treasure Pavilion but still couldn't buy anything. The four assassins were a little anxious. The longer they waited, the easier it would be for them to be exposed. After a full 4 hours, the maid, Little Z, led another maid and the two children to the main hall. Qin Wenyan seemed to have a strong perception. He stared at the assassin at first glance. He felt the killing intent that made him uncomfortable. He snorted and stared at the assassin. The leader of the group was stunned. He didn't expect this little girl to be able to feel his killing intent. Qin Wenyan was too young and didn't understand what that killing intent meant. He held Qin Chusong's hand with one hand and Little Z with the other and walked towards the main door of the God Treasure Pavilion. The assassin followed them out. He poured his divine power into his palms. This palm was enough to kill the two children and the remaining shockwave was enough to kill the two maids. As soon as little Z and the other three entered the street, a chilly wind blew. They felt a chill down their spines and knew that something bad was going to happen. However, they didn't have time to react. The assassin pressed his palms on Qin Wenyan and Qin Chusong's back. Boom! The clothes on the two children suddenly exploded with divine light. The remaining shockwave blasted Qin Wenyan and the other three across the street. Puffed up, the slightly weaker maid exploded and died on the spot. Little Z's divine body exploded and blood stained the street. However, the divine spark was fortunately not damaged and was caught in Qin Wentian's hand. Qin Chusong coughed out blood on the spot. His divine clothes were torn, but he managed to block the fatal blow. Qin Wentian's clothes had been specially modified by Yi Qinghan, and the dagger had blocked a portion of the aftershock. Hence, Qin Wenyan was only affected by the impact and wasn't injured at all. The siblings crashed into the opposite house, and just as they were about to collide with the wall, the assassin exploded once more, wanting to crush their bodies. Whoosh! Qin Wenyan pulled Qin Chusong and disappeared into the wall. The wall didn't suffer any impact. The two disappeared just like that. The assassin was stunned. He didn't know how the two children disappeared, but it didn't stop him from killing them. Boom! The assassin's aura didn't decrease. He smashed the wall and the whole house into pieces. However, there was no sign of Qin Chusong and Qin Wenyan. Impossible! The assassin was furious. He stared in front of him. There was no fluctuation of divine power. There was no fluctuation of space. How could two mortals disappear just like that? What's going on? Where are the two children? One of the assassins saw Qin Wenyan and Qin Chusong disappear. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Go! It's too late. The leader of the assassins knew that time was running out. If they delayed any longer, not only would they fail to complete their mission, they would also lose their lives. Whoosh! Two of the assassins ran out of Deyuan City while the other two stayed on the street. They stared at the place where Qin Wenyan disappeared and prepared to kill him. Chapter 749. Qin Wenyan disappeared just like that. The two assassins who escaped were shocked, and the two who stayed on the street were even more shocked. The assassins attacked a house, and this was a bustling business district. More than 10 people were seriously injured, and a few of them died. The strong cultivators of the God Treasure Pavilion appeared and stared at the direction the two assassins left, but they did not chase after them. At this moment, Qin Wenyan ran out from the next room with Qin Chusong. The middle-aged man's pupils shrank, and he realized that the assassin's targets were the two children, and they were children with almost no cultivation. How did they escape? The middle-aged man was shocked. Before he could ask, the two assassins who stayed on the street attacked Qin Wenyan and Qin Chusong one after the other. The middle-aged man snorted and blocked one of the assassins. He sent the young man flying with a palm strike, but it was too late to stop the other one. Whoosh! The last assassin's sword light shot out in all directions, wrapping around Qin Wenyan and Qin Chusong. Qin Chusong was shocked. He knew that his god's protective garment was broken, but he still hugged Qin Wenyan without hesitation. He wanted to save Qin Wenyan with his life. The dagger on Qin Wentian's waist suddenly vibrated, and it let out a long whistle. It tore apart the red rope and flew towards the assassin. It was as fast as lightning, and there was no way to dodge. Puchid, the dagger pierced into the assassin's throat, but the assassin's sword chi was already close to the two. Just as the two children were about to die, Qin Wenyan pulled Qin Chusong and disappeared again. There were no spatial ripples, no waves of divine power, and they just disappeared. In the end, the assassin died with his eyes wide open. He didn't know that his furious attack missed, and the two children disappeared in front of him again. Puchid, at the dagger in the assassin's throat suddenly moved up and directly pierced through his godhead. In a flash, the delicate dagger retreated and hung in the air, vigilant of the surroundings, as if it had its own consciousness. The dagger launched an attack, but Qin Wenyan and Qin Chusong mysteriously reappeared in the same place. Everyone was dumbfounded. This was simply a miracle. No one knew where Qin Wenyan had taken Qin Chugong and where he had reappeared. Even the middle-aged man from the God's Treasure Pavilion felt that something was amiss. A look of bewilderment appeared on Qin Wentian's young face. She herself didn't know what was going on. She only knew how to dodge subconsciously and was actually able to shuttle through the cosmos as she wished. No matter what it was, she would be able to pass through it. Qin Wenyan stretched out his hand and grabbed hold of the dagger, warily surveying his surroundings. Qin Chuj hurriedly bowed and thanked the middle-aged man from the God Treasure Pavilion respectfully. After all, he didn't know who he was, but he still attacked him without hesitation. "It's fine. Come with me," the middle-aged man said coolly. The middle-aged man brought the two children back to the God Treasure Pavilion. Only then did the people from the Great Path Divine Sect arrive and capture the injured assassin. They wanted to take the children back to the Great Path Divine Sect, but the God Treasure Pavilion refused. In a private room, the middle-aged man slowly sat down. He gestured for Qin Chusong and Qin Wenyan to sit down as well. He asked calmly, "Who are you? Who is the one who wants to assassinate you? Who brought you to the Great Abyss City?" Qin Wenyan didn't utter a word. She was still holding onto the dagger. Her small face was pale as if she was frightened. Qin Chusong had experienced a lot and quickly calmed down. He replied respectfully, "We are orphans from the Qin town. Uncle Qin, you brought us here. He went to participate in the Great Path Divine Sect's examination and hasn't returned yet. We don't know those assassins at all." Qin town? The middle-aged man squinted his eyes at Qin Wenyan and the dagger in her hand. With such a physique and such a dagger, how could it be from the Qin town? "Little brat, where did you take your brother to?" the middle-aged man asked curiously. "I'm not telling you. Uncle said that I can't tell anyone about my secret," Qin Wenyan said nervously as she held onto the dagger. "But I saved your life. You should be able to trust me." The middle-aged man looked at Qin Wenyan's white and tender round face and revealed a gentle smile. Buzz. The dagger suddenly broke free from Qin Wenyan's small hand and stabbed into the table as if warning the middle-aged man. At this moment, Yi Qinghan had already left the valley with Hua Xinyang. More than 100 experts had been devoured by the divine beasts. Not even their bones were left. The smell of blood still lingered in the air. At this moment, Yi Qinghan was preparing to continue his search for Qin Shenluo. However, the agitation of the dagger caused his soul to be agitated as well. He couldn't help but frown. Did someone attack Wendian? Yi Qinghan muttered to himself. He felt a little regretful. He should have left either the multicolored snake or the god-slaying eagle behind to protect the two children. There were too many things he couldn't see through Qin Wenyan. This child was involved in the later stages of the Great Path Divine Sect. Nothing must happen to him. Yi Qinghan looked at Hua Xinyang and didn't know what to do. "Yi Qinghan, you've caused me so much trouble. I won't be able to establish myself in the Clear Moon realm anymore." Hua Xinyang smiled bitterly. "You're known as the think tank. Can't you survive?" "What a piece of trash," the divine bird said disdainfully. "What do you know? Now that we're out of the secret realm, we'll definitely face countless experts from Scandinavia and the two major sections. I can't even be considered as cannon fodder. They won't reason with me and won't even give me a chance to speak." Hua Xinyang was going crazy. She might be able to escape this humiliation, but it wouldn't be so easy the next time. Yi Qinghan remained silent for a moment before saying indifferently, "Those people are all dead. Now no one knows if you're dead or alive. Reconstruct your body and leave the Clear Moon realm." Hua Xinyang looked at Yi Qinghan angrily and asked, "You're chasing me away just like that? Don't you want to take responsibility? If you follow me, I'm afraid you won't even know how you died. Are you sure you want me to take responsibility?" Yi Qinghan asked calmly. Hua Xinyang's breath stagnated. Following Yi Qinghan was indeed akin to a bomb. They could encounter the experts from Scandinavia and the two major sects at any time. If a battle broke out, she wouldn't even be considered as cannon fodder. "I don't care. Anyway, you have to take responsibility. At least I'll die a quick death if I follow you. If you let me go now, I'm afraid I'll die a horrible death." Hua Xinyang's chest heaved up and down. She felt extremely helpless. Following Yi Qinghan was indeed unwise, but it was the best choice now. "Then follow me. I'm going back to the Yuan city." Yi Qinghan picked up his saber and walked away, leaving Hua Xinyang standing there in a daze. Hua Xinyang's clothes were ragged. Looking at Yi Qinghan's back, she stomped her feet in anger. She quickly changed into a new set of clothes and chased after him. Yi Qinghan, didn't you want to kill Qing Shenluo? I have a way for you to find him as soon as possible. In less than a month, I'll make him send himself to hell. If you go out now, you'll definitely encounter the experts from Void Spirit God Sect and Divine Qilin Sect. Hua Xinyang did not want Yi Qinghan to leave the secret zone now. If he did, he would definitely die. She could only tempt him. There's no need for that. I can kill Qing Shenluo at any time, but returning to Deyuan City is an urgent matter. Yi Qinghan was worried that something would happen to him. There was no room for negotiation. Then let's change our route. We can't go back the same way unless you want to face the 3 half-step over gods, Hua Xinyang said helplessly. If you have a route, then lead the way. I'll try my best to escort you out of this realm or let you join the Great Path Divine Sect. It's your choice. Yi Qinghan turned around and stared at the beautiful woman in front of him without any hesitation. I know a shortcut that's very dangerous. However, I think with your cultivation base, it shouldn't be a problem. Hua Xinyang thought for a moment and decided to take the risk. It was better than going against the 3 major forces. Chapter 750. The Clear Moon Divine Kingdom and the 2 major sects were furious when they learned that the 4 assassins they sent had not only failed to kill the 2 children without cultivation but also lost 2 of them. The half-step overgod personally contacted the elites of the assassin world and demanded that Qin Chusong and Qin Wenyan be killed. The price was raised to 300,000 high-grade divine crystals. The assassins in the world of assassins were all shocked. The price of killing 2 mortals was actually comparable to killing a superior god priest, or even higher. On that day, many strangers appeared in the territory of the Great Path Divine Sect, and some of them were well-known figures. Everyone was fighting for Qin Wenyan, and Qin Chusong became secondary. The Great Path Divine Sect requested the God Treasure Pavilion to hand over Qin Chusong and Qin Wenyan, but the God Treasure Pavilion was unwilling to do so. The other 3 forces wanted to kill Qin Wenyan, and the Great Abyss City became a battleground for the various forces. Everyone was in danger. The God Treasure Pavilion's forces were not weak. Their branches occupied almost every corner of the realm, and they even meddled in other realms. Their business was much bigger than the Upright Sun Chamber of Commerce, and they had countless experts. They did not agree to hand over Qin Wenyan and only said that they wanted to protect the child. The Great Path Divine Sect had no reason to do so. They could only send Meng Xinghuan and Feng Yuesheng to live in the nearby streets, hoping to protect Qin Wenyan. The Great Path Divine Sect was under a lot of pressure. Yi Qinghan killed 2 geniuses consecutively, which implicated the children. If the Great Path Divine Sect could not even protect the 2 children, Yi Qinghan would be angry, and no one would have an easy time. The servant girl Little Z's soul was not severely damaged, and her godhead was intact. With the help of the God Treasure Pavilion, she quickly reconstructed her body. Logically speaking, she could control the current situation, but she did not dare to take the risk of bringing the 2 children back to the side courtyard. Following the Great Path Divine Sect or the God Treasure Pavilion was the best choice now. Qin Wenyan and Qin Chusong were now looking at Little Z. Little Z was only a low-ranking god priest. Because she was poor, she had been in the Jianghu since she was young. To be able to become a low-ranking god priest meant that she was really smart. At this moment, she did not know who to trust. The attitude of the God Treasure Pavilion was very firm. They wanted to bring Qin Wenyan away, but Qin Yu had already gone to participate in the Great Tao Divine Sex test. Now, no one knew if he was dead or alive. The Great Tao Divine Sect could forget about bringing the 2 children away. That middle-aged man in embroidered robes was a direct descendant of the Chun clan of the God Treasure Pavilion. His name was Zizhong, and since he was able to control the God Treasure Pavilion of the Great Abyss City, he naturally had great capabilities. He was sure that Qin Wenyan wasn't a simple character. Although he didn't know what physique Qin Wenyan had, he knew that it would be best if he could control Qin Wenyan. Many experts had come to the Divine Treasure Pavilion. The weakest among them was a perfect stage middle-rank great god. There were 4 more intermediate stage great gods and 1 more advanced stage great god. In addition to Zizhong, no one would be able to barge into the Divine Treasure Pavilion single-handedly unless they were half-step lords. Zizhong didn't make things difficult for Qin Wenyan. He only persuaded Qin Chuj and Little Violet to stay here temporarily and wait for the so-called Qin Yu to appear. In order to make Qin Wenyan stay, Zizhong didn't hesitate to slander the Great Path Divine Sect and kill Qin Yu. The Great Path Divine Sect couldn't do anything about it. If they let Li Sha snatch Qin Wenyan away, it would be equivalent to offending the God Treasure Pavilion. It would be even more difficult for the Great Path Divine Sect to develop in the future. In the Great Abyss City, the number of experts had increased significantly. Many of them were well-known figures from different realms. Some of them wore bamboo hats to hide their identities. The various forces intertwined with each other. No one knew what each other's true intentions were. However, the general goal could be determined. They either wanted to snatch Qin Wenyan away or kill him. News of Qin Wenyan strangely taking Qin Chuj away that day and his inexplicable appearance had already spread far and wide. At the Great Path Divine Sects when Dao Peak, the white-haired Li Sha looked at the Great Abyss City. "Senior brother, should we seal off the Great Abyss City?" Wen Zheng asked with a frown. "How do we seal it off? This is a public place. Everyone has the right to come here. We don't have the right to seal it off. Otherwise, how can our Great Path Divine Sect establish itself in the future?" Li Sha said in a heavy voice. "But according to what I know, the two children are wearing the Divine Protector robes specially crafted by Yi Qinghan. Qin Wenyan even has a high god artifact protecting him. From this, one can see how important he is to Qin Wenyan. If something happens and Yi Qinghan is angered, it's fine. But if Yi Qinghan is angered, we would be surrounded by enemies." Wen Jing smiled bitterly. Li Sha fell silent. Right now, he could only blame the damnable God Treasure Pavilion for wanting a share of the profits. They had Qin Wenyan in their hands. He couldn't even forcefully snatch him away. Zizhong is personally overseeing the situation. With so many experts around him, there shouldn't be any problems. Let's wait a little longer. If there's really no other way, I will personally go and talk to the God Treasure Pavilion. Li Sha tightened his grip on the sword in his hand. Killing intent radiated in all directions, transforming into sword chi that pierced through the void. Although Big Abyss City appeared to be a peaceful city, it was filled with killing intent. Spies were roaming all around the God Treasure Pavilion. Zizhong was under great pressure as well. He was trying his best to get Qin Wenyan out of the city. However, if he left the city at this time, without a half-step lord overseeing the situation, he wouldn't be able to take Qin Wenyan away. In the main hall, Zizhong sat in the main seat with a solemn expression. He said to the man in black in front of him, "What did the patriarch say?" "My lord, he wants us to investigate Qin Wenyan's identity first. If he's not worth it, we'll give up and send him back to his residence. If he's worth it, we'll send him back to the main sect to be nurtured. Perhaps we can nurture a half-step lord of our own," the man in black said with a bow. Zizhong frowned and said coldly, "Didn't you say? If I can find out what kind of physique he has, why would I still be waiting here?" "My lord, please calm down. The patriarch has already sent someone to invite the people from the Wangu Yun clan. They're from the chaos. They'll definitely be able to find out Qin Wenyan's physique. You just need to buy some time," the man in black hurriedly said with a bow. On the second night, two silhouettes appeared outside Big Abyss City. It was a man and a woman. The man was as handsome as jade and stood upright like a javelin. He held a 7-foot-long saber in his hand. The woman was dressed in a plain green robe. She was no longer the scantily clad Miss Hua. The two of them were Yi Qinghan and Hua Xinyang. "Follow me." As soon as Yi Qinghan got close to Big Abyss City, he could feel the dense murderous intent emanating from the city. Many pairs of eyes also noticed him. The people from the three major forces also received the news. However, Li Sha did not come out to welcome them. Instead, he secretly transmitted his voice to them, "Be careful. Big Abyss City is now a place of trouble. Many powerful assassins are targeting Qin Wenyan. Qin Wenyan is now in the God's Treasure Pavilion." Yi Qinghan nodded and brought Hua Xinyang into the city. The streets were brightly lit. All the experts stopped and stared at Yi Qinghan and Hu Xinyang. They were about to unsheath their weapons. Meng Xinghuan's appearance on the streets caused the atmosphere to become even more oppressive. Follow Meng Xinghuan to the Great Tao Divine Sect. I have some personal matters to settle. Yi Qinghan gripped his saber tightly and channeled his god force into it. The saber light illuminated the sky. Rustled up with so many experts gathered here, it would be better to kill Yi Qinghan directly. Qin Wenyan was worth 300,000 high-grade divine crystals. No matter what, Yi Qinghan was worth 300,000 top-grade divine crystals. He believed that the three major forces could afford it. Chapter 751. On the main street of Big Abyss City, a slanted shadow grew longer and longer. His saber was held horizontally, and his battle intent was soaring. He's not a half-step lord level in disguise. He's really a perfected middle rank. Many people had confirmed Yi Qinghan's true cultivation base and were extremely shocked. A perfected middle rank had killed the chief disciples of two major sects in this realm. It was unbelievable. Now, the half-step lords from the three major organizations were too ashamed to come out and kill him. How could they have the nerve to come out and kill their chief disciples when a middle-rank priest killed them? Hu Xinyang murmured. Her heart trembled as she looked at Yi Qinghan's proud back. She would never see such a figure again in her life. This was an unbreakable legend. Regardless of whether Yi Qinghan could make it out of this 10-mile street alive, he was worthy of respect. No less than 300 top-notch assassins had gathered on this street, and all of them were high gods. As for middle-rank priest assassins, it was difficult to count them. There were at least 2,000, if not 3,000. Even if Qingshan Luo came, he would die on this street. No one dared to say that they would walk from this street to the end. Be careful. Hu Xinyang clenched her fists helplessly. If she were a high-rank priest, she might be able to help him. Unfortunately, she was too weak. Yi Qinghan nodded, indicating for her to leave immediately as some of the assassins were about to lose their patience. Meng Xinghuan quickly took Hu Xinyang away. The Great Path Divine Sect could not interfere. If they did, it would be equivalent to telling the world that Yi Qinghan had been ordered by the Great Path Divine Sect to kill the chief disciples of the two sections. Such a crime would probably trigger a war. As soon as Meng Xinghuan and Hu Xinyang left, a high-rank priest's arrogant sword. He pierced through the air with his sword and charged toward Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan twisted his toes and moved sideways, avoiding the sharp sword aura. He swung his saber and the space before him distorted as the saber gleam shot into the sky. Boom! The saber was unstoppable. Even the powerhouse's sword was broken. In the blink of an eye, the saber had reached his opponent's body. Splat! A high god could not block the saber. He was split into two, and his godhead was split open. Whoosh! The Pishio soared into the sky and swallowed the corpse. When one person moved, 100 people followed suit. The assassins drew their swords and sword chi rose one after another. No one in the Great Abyss City spoke. They only wanted to kill. Screech! Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The god-slaying eagle soared into the sky and let out a mournful roar. Its sharp claws clawed at an expert, while the colorful snake coiled around another expert and transformed into the heavenly dragon coiling eagle. The star-twining vine danced with millions of vines. On average, 10,000 vines could entangle one expert for a while. The Pishio tore through the void and disappeared. When it reappeared, it had bitten off the neck of a high god and swallowed him. Yi Qinghan moved as well. He crushed the ground with his foot, causing stone fragments to fly in all directions. Like a long saber, he charged into the crowd. With a sweep of his saber, blood and flesh flew everywhere. With his boundless strength and speed, even a superior deity artifact could not block his attacks. Boom! Boom! Hum hum hum! Banged at the sounds of corpses exploding and divine weapons breaking rang out incessantly. Blood flew everywhere and bones were broken. Corpses were sent flying one after another, smashing into the distance. Blood flowed like a river on the long street. Boom! The city gates of Great Abyss City were sealed shut. Divine light radiated for thousands of meters as the city's defenses were activated. It was unknown whether they were going to close the gates and beat up the dogs or massacre the entire city. Wah wah wah. The void collapsed. One man and one saber were rampaging through the city like chopping melons and vegetables. He did not care about the lives of others, nor did he care about his own life. In the short time it took for an incense stick to burn, Yi Qinghan was stabbed 7 times. Blood flowed like a river, but he had also hacked tens of people to death. Boom. Yi Qinghan's massacre caused everyone to tremble in fear. A large number of experts began to retreat. They were forced to retreat by Yi Qinghan alone. His aura was too strong, as if he wanted to defy the heavens. The heavenly Tao descended, and the momentum of heaven and earth was gathered by him alone. Yi Qinghan was indifferent. He held his saber horizontally at his waist and pressed forward step by step. Looking at the large number of experts, he knew that he could not retreat today. He had to fight or die. He had to fight until all his enemies died. If he retreated, both of them would die. A bunch of trash. You sent so many people just to kill a 4-year-old child. Yi Qinghan's voice was hoarse as he shouted in a stern voice. The Pai Xiu disappeared again and pounced on another expert. With the 4 divine beasts guarding his back, Yi Qinghan walked forward alone. There were so many people on the street, but no one dared to obstruct him. Although the cultivation of these assassins was high, they were still lacking when compared to Yan Yunbei. At the very least, their moral standing had dropped by several levels. Yan Yunbei would never make a move against the old, weak, sick, or disabled. He would also assassinate experts. However, this group of people actually dared to make a move against a 4-year-old child. Moreover, a child with no cultivation. Yi Qinghan shattered the earth and swept his saber across. To him, group battles were not difficult. He had the advantage. Yi Qinghan roared. Who dares to fight against him? Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Boom, 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 boom. 5 dragons appeared at the same time. The great Tao rumbled. The 5 elements and spatial laws in the entire Deyuan city were agitated. Flames shot up to the sky and burned everything. Yi Qinghan swept up the fire dragons and pounced on the crowd. The blood river burned. The experts standing afar were aghast. Yi Qinghan was simply not human. He was simply a homicidal maniac. This was much more terrifying than a massacre. How many experts could a city have? However, Deyuan City was different. There were so many experts gathered here. They were all elites of the assassin world. Yi Qinghan did not want to kill them. However, at this point, it was impossible to retreat. If he did not kill until the enemy was terrified, he would not be able to bring the 2 children away. Bringing them out of the city was equivalent to bringing them to hell. Since he had chosen to bring the 2 children with him, he had no intention of letting them go. Since he had acknowledged them, he would protect them like his own children. The 10-mile-long street became endless. It was overcrowded with people. Many people were hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Corpses and bones piled up. The smell of blood was nauseating. The streets and houses became empty. Everyone retreated 1,000 meters away. Seeing Yi Qinghan killing his way into the crowd, no one could stop him. They could not help but be shocked. The blood in their bodies froze and was about to boil. He is Qinyu? Zizhong stood on the roof of the God Treasure Pavilion. He was so shocked that his hair stood on end. He had never seen such a ruthless person in his life. He fought without caring about his own life. Who would not be afraid of such a person? Who would dare to fight with all their heart? The enemy was defeated without a fight. This was the result Yi Qinghan wanted. In the middle of the night, Yi Qinghan pushed his way through 5 miles. His blood dyed the street red. There were no less than 30 wounds on his body. However, he did not kill everyone. The closer he got to this point, the more careful the enemy would be. They did not believe that Yi Qinghan still had the strength to fight. Even if he had the divine power, his body should not be able to withstand it. However, they were disappointed. Yi Qinghan's divine power seemed to have exceeded their expectations. With 10 godhoods operating at the same time, in addition to the primal chaos divine source and the mutated brown bear's demon core, who could outlast him? The frenzy's blade was blunted. There were dozens of gaps and it could break at any time. This gave people hope. As expected, Yi Qinghan put away the frenzy. He did not have to worry about his back because he had the Pai Xiu and the star twining vine. His eyes stared straight ahead. He clenched his fists and the cold smile on his face sent chills down people's spines. Boom! Yi Qinghan jumped up and punched a high god's divine body. He crossed his palms and clamped down on a divine sword. He raised his leg and kicked the assassin away. He continuously soared into the air and attacked with elbows and knees. He used the enemy's body as a defense. Every part of the enemy's body was a lethal weapon. At this moment, everyone understood that Yi Qinghan's body was truly unparalleled. Even the Saint Qilin King paled in comparison. Bang! One by one, the divine bodies exploded and were dyed red with battle intent. Divine clothes flapped and divine blood dripped. The heroes retreated. Their teeth were sore and their legs were trembling. Four swords shot out at the same time and attacked Yi Qinghan from all directions. They were scattered in a picturesque manner. It would be difficult to block the first sword, but if they blocked the third, there would be a fourth. The seemingly flawless combination attack gave everyone hope. Kill! Another dozen or so super experts came to kill him. Yi Qinghan ignored the assassins charging from behind. He grabbed the two divine swords on his left and right and kicked the expert in front of him. The two divine swords were caught. Yi Qinghan's azure dragon arm's veins bulged. His dragon blood boiled and his dragon scales stood out. He actually broke the two high god weapons. The dozen people charging over felt their legs go soft and were sent flying. Boom! Yi Qinghan's kick was even faster than Quang Quang's. The explosive power of his kick cut through the void and landed squarely on the head of the person in front of him. The person's head fell to the ground first, and his head exploded. Swish! 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 Yi Qinghan stabbed the two experts crazily with the broken sword. In a short moment, hundreds of wounds appeared on their bodies. The middle-level god priests at the periphery couldn't take it anymore. They vomited and retreated. They had never seen someone kill people like this. On a tower 1,000 meters away, Feng Yuesheng's hands were trembling. She couldn't even hold the divine whip. Looking at the so-called silk pants in front of her, she realized how bad her eyesight was. How was this a silk pants? He was clearly a killing god. 4 assassins attacked at the same time. 3 of them were killed by Yi Qinghan, and the last one was eaten by the 4 divine beasts. He didn't even have the chance to scream. Yi Qinghan killed everyone until they were sent flying. They didn't dare to come closer. The divine bird suddenly rushed out and stood proudly on its shoulder. It said arrogantly, "A bunch of trash. This divine bird hasn't even made a move and all of you have turned into dregs. Dregs that don't even have a fighting strength dare to go against us." For a moment, everyone was stunned. They thought that the divine bird's cultivation was ridiculous and waited until the last moment to make a move. However, they didn't know that the divine bird didn't have any fighting strength. Its ability to scare people was quite good. Come. Whoever can withstand one move from this divine bird, I will spare your life. The divine bird saw that everyone was frightened and immediately said proudly. Yi Qinghan coughed up blood. There were a few bloody holes on his chest that couldn't be sealed. Even if he swallowed a few heaven reversal pills and various divine medicines, they could only temporarily suppress his injuries. Once it erupted, the wounds would immediately burst open. This battle made people's hearts turn cold. Li Sha felt that his title of killing god should be given up. 10 miles long street, bathed in blood. Don't you dare touch my people. If even a strand of his hair is missing, I will crush the nest of the assassin world. Also, tell the employer behind you that he was killed by me. If he has the ability, come at me. Yi Qinghan said coldly. Chapter 752. In a single night, thousands of heroes were killed, and blood dyed the streets red. 1 man and 1 saber stood proudly in the river of blood. This required not only courage, but also terrifying strength. The people in the God Treasure Pavilion discussed the tragic battle. Qin Shugong's fingers were digging into his flesh, and Qin Wentian's hands were trembling. Qin Wenyan didn't understand why Yi Qinghan was fighting so hard, but they knew that her uncle was here to pick her up. Yi Qinghan walked towards the crossroad empty-handed. In the direction of the God Treasure Pavilion, there were less than 300 assassins left. More than half of them were killed in a single night, and no one dared to kill any more. The sky gradually brightened, and everyone was covered in blood. Some were their own, some were their teammates, and some were Yi Qinghan's. The assassins had all retreated, and the streets were destroyed. The great Tao divine sect came out to clean up the battlefield. Yi Qinghan glanced at the disciples of the great Tao divine sect coldly. They were so scared that they kept retreating, not daring to get close. After swallowing more than 10 divine pills, Yi Qinghan only wanted to recover as soon as possible. Gulped at the commoners and disciples of the great Tao divine sect looked at Yi Qinghan's back, and couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. They watched as he headed towards the God Treasure Pavilion. Zizhong personally went up to welcome him with a smile. "You must be Qin Wentian's uncle, Taoist Qin Yu?" Zizhong clasped his fists. Yi Qinghan nodded, and asked in a hoarse voice, "Where are Wenyan and Chu Gong? What happened in the past few days?" Zizhong had already investigated the Qin town and knew that Qin Yu was indeed a person, but he had disappeared for a long time. No one knew where he went. The two children were also from the Qin town. Such a small power was just a small rogue cultivator in front of the God Treasure Pavilion. He wanted to rope in Yi Qinghan. He said, "Taoist Qin, a few days ago, for people wanted to assassinate Qin Wenyan. I pitied him and saved him, but one of the maidservants was sacrificed. One of them only had her soul and Godhead left, so I gave her a body sculpting pill, allowing her to reconstruct her golden body. I knew that if I let them leave now, they would die, so I made the decision to leave them in the God Treasure Pavilion. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist. I will remember this favor." Yi Qinghan cupped his fists, blood dripping from between his brows. He was exhausted and wanted to leave this troublesome place for the time being. He said, "Fellow Taoist, please leave the child to me. I'll visit you again when I'm better. The assassins will come back at any time. Why don't you stay in the God's Treasure Pavilion? We can take care of each other." Zizhong smiled. He didn't want to hand Zizhong over. Yi Qinghan unhesitatingly rejected Zizhong's suggestion. Although Zizhong had saved Qin Wenyan, it was most probably because Qin Wentian's physique had been exposed. If they wanted to snatch Qin Wenyan away, they might kill him at any time. One shouldn't have the heart to harm others, but one must always be vigilant against others. If he didn't have this bit of vigilance, he wouldn't have been able to survive for so long. And as expected, Li Sha soon sent a message to remind him, telling him everything that happened during these few days. The Divine Treasure Pavilion wanted to take Qin Wenyan for themselves and had no intentions of returning him. "Fellow Taoist, leave the child to me. I will return the favor." Yi Qinghan narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "You're being unreasonable as an uncle. Aren't you sending Qin Wenyan to his death? If he stays in the God's Treasure Pavilion, I can guarantee that he will be safe." Zizhong also became aggressive and didn't want to give in. Qin Chuj and Qin Wenyan wanted to rush out of the God's Treasure Pavilion, but they were suppressed. "Do you want to protect them, or do you not want to return them to me?" Yi Qinghan's aura turned cold as he asked in a hoarse voice. "So what if I don't want to return them? You're not even their biological uncle. Do you think the God's Treasure Pavilion won't find out? You're cheating the child's feelings. The God's Treasure Pavilion can't stand it. Since we've been involved in this matter from the start, there's no reason for us to give up halfway. Also, I've already asked the Qin clan leader of the Qin town to come to Diyuan City. The decision of the child is in his hands, not yours. You've already offended the three major powers. You better not offend the God's Treasure Pavilion." Zizhong said coldly. "Fuck." The divine bird was furious. This was a typical example of shamelessness. Yi Qinghan grinned coldly. He clenched his fingers and the Shifang seal appeared in his palm. He said with a murderous aura, "What if I offend you guys as well? Do you think I care?" Zizhong was shocked and retreated continuously. He could feel the murderous aura coming from Yi Qinghan's body. He couldn't control his qi and blood. Kid, I can give you Qin Chuj, but Qin Wenyan has to stay. I'll compensate you. In the future, Qin Wenyan will no longer be a sacrifice in the battle between you and the three major powers. The God's Treasure Pavilion will nurture him. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Zizhong stabilized his aura and said in a low voice, I'll say it one more time. Give me the child. I won't say it a third time. I can kill all the experts on the Tenley Street and make them run for their lives. I can also destroy a small branch of the God's Treasure Pavilion. With just these few people, I don't put them in my eyes. Yi Qinghan said sternly. Zizhong could feel Yi Qinghan's murderous aura. He knew that if he didn't hand Qin Wenyan over, the battle today would be unavoidable. Not to mention protecting Qin Wenyan, even keeping his life would be a problem. At this moment, Feng Yuesheng flew down from the sky and landed beside Yi Qinghan. She said indifferently, Pavilion Master Z, didn't you say that if Qin Yu came, you would return the child? Are you going back on your words? I'm talking about the real Qin Yu. His background is still unknown. Zizhong said with disdain. My background? You can't afford to offend me. My time is limited. I'll give you 10 breaths of time to consider. Either you die or hand over the child. Yi Qinghan said coldly. The four experts behind Zizhong had just seen Yi Qinghan's ruthlessness. For a moment, they didn't have the confidence to risk their lives against him. The key was that they were high up in the air. If they were to risk their lives against a madman, they wouldn't be able to withstand the torment. The moment they saw Yi Qinghan's aura rising, their breathing quickened. Everyone looked at Zizhong. It was up to him to decide whether to fight or to kill. Zizhong was under immense pressure. He was drenched in cold sweat. He didn't have the courage to fight, but he also didn't want to hand Qin Wenyan over. After 9 breaths of time, Yi Qinghan made his move. The 10-direction seal exploded with a terrifying aura, as though it was going to crush the entire Diyuan city. Sir? The people behind Zizhong reminded him in shock. Wait, I'll hand the child over to you. Zizhong was unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. This was just a dispensable branch of the God Treasure Pavilion. There weren't many experts here. If he were to fight with Yi Qinghan now, he would be courting death. Bring the child out. Zizhong said coldly. Uncle. Qin Wenyan and Qin Chushi were brought out by Little Purple. They ran directly towards Yi Qinghan. Their tears couldn't be stopped at all. Yi Qinghan carried Qin Wenyan and pulled Qin Chushi away. Little Purple followed behind them. Her body was tense. A battle between experts wasn't something she could interfere with. I don't care who you are. Since this child is fated to be with the God Treasure Pavilion, we will definitely get him back. You will definitely regret what you did today. Zizhong said coldly. He didn't want to be weak. Come and get it. Yi Qinghan didn't stop. He took big strides forward. Chapter 753. Yi Qinghan took the siblings and little Z back to the courtyard. He gritted his teeth and persevered. He set up a powerful defensive array in the courtyard. Feng Yuesheng didn't dare to say anything. Guard the door for me for a day. Yi Qinghan said to Feng Yuesheng in a commanding tone. Feng Yuesheng had never been ordered like this before, but she wasn't angry. Instead, she nodded obediently. She was completely subdued by Yi Qinghan's domineering aura. Boom! Yi Qinghan closed the door and activated the array. He fell to the ground and couldn't get up. This night was too tiring. He was able to hold on until now purely because of his willpower. Even if he was full of divine power, his body couldn't withstand such a heavy load. After fighting for an entire night, if it was someone else, they would have collapsed long ago. Qin Chusong and Little Purple dragged Yi Qinghan back to the room. They found that his aura was faintly discernible, but there was nothing they could do. They could only wait. Yi Qinghan only felt that his head was heavy and his feet were light. He felt dizzy and his mind was dark. His 10 fingers clenched the bedsheets, and his brows were knitted. His mental state was tense to the extreme. The 10 godhoods operated on their own at the same time to repair his body. The dead flesh on his wounds was minced by divine power and reshaped. His blood flowed all over the floor. The piercing pain made Yi Qinghan groan uncontrollably. The 5 elements and profound Tao in his body cooperated with the dragon blood and grew on their own. He was only half a step away from breaking through. Boom, boom, boom. Yi Qinghan's veins were bulging. His blood was flowing. The veins on the surface of his body were clearly visible. A large amount of power of faith rushed to the godhood. The godhood began to grow and rushed to the superior god shrine. After a night of hard fighting, Yi Qinghan finally began to break through. Fortunately, the primal chaos divine source was in his hand. It provided him with an endless amount of primal chaos energy. When it entered his body, it was transformed into divine power. The divine power rushed to the godhood, and the space inside the godhood expanded several times. The massive amount of power of faith coming from the mythological existential plane and the endless existential planes was enough for him to achieve a breakthrough. 5 elements of heaven and earth, the great Tao returns to one. Yi Qinghan murmured in his heart as he activated his mental cultivation technique and rapidly increased his cultivation base. The first to break through to the upper level was the 5 elements Godhead. Yi Qinghan was the most familiar with the profound mysteries of the 5 elements, so it was the easiest for him to break through. His fire divine core was the first to break through and become a higher deity. Its surface was fiery red, and while it didn't appear to have changed much from the outside, its internal space had actually expanded by several hundred times. This was the difference between a higher god shrine and an intermediate god shrine. A higher god shrine could instantly suppress 100 intermediate great perfection deities. Upon entering the realm of a high god priest, not only did the amount of divine power they could store increase, but the power they could unleash in an instant was also 100 times greater than that of a medium god priest. Yi Qinghan possessed 10 divine personas, which meant that the power he could unleash in an instant was 10 times greater than that of a medium god priest. On top of that, he was already invincible among those of the same level. Was such an existence something that humans could contend against? After the first divine persona was upgraded, the second divine persona, the third divine persona. For a day and a night, Yi Qinghan actually emptied the primal chaos divine source. Strength recovery pills, heaven reversal pills, and even the divine pills that the divine bird obtained from the divine tomb were all used up by Yi Qinghan. He forcibly upgraded the 5 elements divine personas to a higher god, and the thunder divine persona was upgraded as well. However, the space divine persona was too powerful, and there wasn't enough divine power. Yi Qinghan had no choice but to stop the upgrade. Yi Qinghan let out a low roar, and all the wounds on his divine body healed. He slowly sat up and seemed to have grown a little taller. His clothes were a little short, and his hair reached his waist. The blood on his clothes had coagulated, and the blood clots gave off an unpleasant smell. Yi Qinghan tore his clothes apart, and the scars were still there. It was a ghastly sight. At this moment, Little Purple heard the noise and ran in. When she saw Yi Qinghan's bare upper body, she quickly bowed and said, "Esteemed Lord, I wanted to help you change your clothes, but your spirit pet forbade me from getting close, so, go out." "It's fine, I'll do it myself." Yi Qinghan nodded and said. Little Purple knew that Yi Qinghan wasn't like other men, so she didn't dare to get too close. She immediately left the room. Yi Qinghan mobilized the water origin and washed his body. He quickly changed into a new set of clothes and went to the front yard. The 2 children were unusually diligent in their cultivation, and even the young Qin Wenin had started to cultivate secret techniques. Yi Qinghan nodded and opened the door. He found that Feng Yuesheng was still standing outside and hadn't left. She was very nervous and tired at this moment. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch as he said hoarsely, "Thank you. Go back and tell the 2 grand elders that I will go to the Enlightenment Peak tomorrow and ask them to give me the things they promised." Feng Yuesheng looked at Yi Qinghan's deep eyes. She didn't have the courage to ask Yi Qinghan what the 2 grand elders were talking about. She murmured, but Yi Qinghan had already closed the door. "Who cares about you? Stinking face." Feng Yuesheng angrily stomped her feet and turned to leave. In the room, the 2 children's immature faces revealed a touch of resoluteness and dedication to the martial Tao. Yi Qinghan looked at Qin Wenin and couldn't see through him at all. He had never seen such a physique before. The divine bird was also staring at her. Qin Wenyan could already pass through the wooden door skillfully. There was no need to force her to pass through under the threat of death. Could it be one of the 10 great chaotic physiques? As far as I know, this kind of physique has a memory inheritance. It's far from what the golden bloodline inheritance can compare to. However, this kind of physique has its own camp in the chaotic era. Once it matures, the person with the physique will know where they belong. They will either serve the great demonic god or fight to the death with the sorcerer tribe, the divine bird said in surprise. Yi Qinghan shook his head. He knew nothing about the chaotic era. It was time for him to return to God Extinction Mountain. The second sorcerer god would explain everything. However, before he returned, he had to settle the 3 major forces. Whether it was reconciliation or killing, he had to ensure that their half-step lords couldn't attack. Otherwise, he could escape, but the 2 children couldn't. Uncle, I want to be like you and become a hero. Qin Chusheng stopped cultivating and looked up at Yi Qinghan as he said firmly. Yi Qinghan's expression changed slightly. He said in a deep voice, "There are no heroes in this world, and I'm not one either. You have to understand the purpose of your cultivation. It's not to be a hero, but to protect." Qin Chusheng didn't know what a hero was, but he felt that Yi Qinghan could kill until the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. He was a hero that everyone respected. Don't try to be the hero of the entire universe. Just be your sister's hero and the enemy's nightmare. When it comes to strangers, help them if you can. If you can't help them but force yourself to do so, that's not a hero. If you're a hero by killing more people, won't the world fall into chaos? Yi Qinghan instructed in a deep voice. Qin Chusheng scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. He was a little confused. Yi Qinghan shook his head. Qin Chusheng didn't have much talent. It was a blessing for him to live a peaceful life. Uncle, I understand what you mean. As long as I protect my family, why should I care about the lives of others? Qin Chusheng grinned and said seriously. Yi Qinghan was speechless. Chapter 754. When Qin Wenyan said this, a bolt of lightning struck down from the sky, shaking the spacetime. The divine bird snuck a glance at Yi Qinghan and discovered that something was wrong. It hurriedly reprimanded, "Why is a child speaking the truth? Weren't you the one who told me?" Qin Wenyan pouted and looked at the divine bird curiously. Yi Qinghan drew in a deep breath. He was angered by the divine bird. How old was Qin Wenyan? What did he teach and what did he learn? If he was led by the divine bird, he would definitely walk on the wrong path. The divine bird flew into a rage out of humiliation. It didn't expect Qin Wenyan to sell it out like this. It didn't dare to offend Yi Qinghan and hurriedly laughed. "I only taught her how to protect herself. She comprehended it wrongly. In the future, just teach Chuge. You are forbidden from talking to Wenyan." Yi Qinghan said angrily. Little Violet prepared breakfast. The 4 of them ate and stepped into the great Tao divine sect together. Li Sha and Wenjing personally came to welcome them. They didn't treat Yi Qinghan as a junior but as an equal. Yi Qinghan left the divine bird and the god-slaying eagle by Qin Wentian's side and followed Li Sha to the back of the Tao Enlightenment Peak. The great Tao boundary monument was erected in the forbidden area. The tadpole-like runes could actually move about, and the order of the runes was constantly changing. For those with weak wills, just a single glance at the runes would cause them to be severely injured. Around the Great Tao Boundary Monument, there were a few smaller Great Tao Boundary Monuments. However, they were inscribed by generations of experts of the Great Tao Divine Sect and were fundamentally different from the Great Tao Boundary Monument. The Great Tao Boundary Monument of Reincarnation, Great Tao Boundary Monument of Primal Chaos, Great Tao Boundary Monument of Fate, Great Tao Boundary Monument of Destruction, and Great Tao Boundary Monument of Karma. Although they were very simple, they were all at the small success stage. The most important thing was that these stone monuments were very detailed and easier to understand compared to the real Great Tao Boundary Monument. At the very least, they wouldn't injure people. The boundary stone of the Great Path of Order was more than 3 meters tall, and the runes seemed to have been born at the beginning of the world. It was not man-made at all. Standing there, It was enough to suppress a world. There are a total of 6 great Tao boundary steels, 6 law boundary steels, and 9 elemental boundary steels. They were created by the 21 overgods of the primal chaos era who controlled the laws of grand Taos and the elements. They have long since disappeared. They have either collapsed or disappeared into the annals of history. My sect obtained the great Tao of order boundary steel by chance and created our great Tao divine sect. A few years ago, our previous sect master found another great Tao of karma boundary steel in the primal chaos universe. Yi Qinghan nodded. To be able to gather 2 boundary stones of the Great Path, the Great Path Divine Clan was definitely very lucky. Thank you for your teachings, seniors. I will return this favor to you before I leave. Where is the other Karma Great Tao boundary stone? Yi Qinghan asked calmly. Li Sha frowned and said immediately, the Karma Great Tao boundary stone is suppressed under Enlightenment Peak. We can't comprehend it either. Please give up, fellow cultivator. Yi Qinghan turned his head and looked at Enlightenment Peak. To be able to suppress the Great Tao boundary stone under the main peak, one could see how terrifying the 5 half-step lords were. However, he would not give up. The Great Tao boundary stone was not a treasure that could be found anywhere. There were only a few of them in the entire universe. When he left, he would comprehend them even if he had to snatch them. Give me 3 months. I'll have to trouble both of you to take care of the child during these 3 months. Yi Qinghan walked to the Great Tao of Order boundary stone and sat down cross-legged. His eyes stared at the Great Tao boundary stone without blinking. The tadpole script circulated rapidly, tearing at the soul and changing the order. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The tadpole script transformed into wisps of divine light that charged into Yi Qinghan's consciousness. Yi Qinghan gradually closed his eyes. A terrifying aura emanated from his body, and his black hair fluttered without any wind. Li Sha and Wen Zheng looked at each other. They cast a formation to seal off the forbidden area and retreated from the back of the mountain. How far do you think this child can go? Wen Zheng whispered. The grim demon from last night had shocked him. He had never seen someone who was more ruthless to himself and his enemies. I don't know. There's no limit. As long as he doesn't die prematurely, he might be able to break the taboo of this era and become a lord. Li Sha raised his head and sighed. It was a pity that Yi Qinghan was not a disciple of the Great Tao sect. Overgods were powerhouses from the Chaos era. Until now, no one in the 3,000 Middle Planes had been able to break through the legend realm and become an overgod. Even that old monster, Nine Gloom, who had lived for millions of years, was unable to break through the legend realm and become an overgod despite his monstrous combat strength. The child, Qin Wenian, I'm afraid his background is not simple. The old thing from the Z family sent me a message personally, asking me to hand him over to him. He's willing to help the Great Tao sect fight the 3 major forces. Wen Zheng's communication amulet suddenly lit up. When he opened it, he was stunned. He did not expect the Divine Treasure Pavilion, who had never participated in worldly battles, to join forces with the Great Tao sect for a child. You can't hand him over. I'd rather bet that Yi Qinghan would be able to break through the Grand Tao of Order in 3 months and become an existence comparable to us. I can't believe in that treacherous old thing. Li Sha rejected without hesitation. Let's delay it. I think they won't be able to hold it in at most a month and join forces with the 3 major forces to pressure us. Wen Zheng sighed. Now that they had offended the 3 major forces and the Divine Treasure Pavilion, it would be difficult for the Great Tao sect to do anything. In the Great Tao sect, Qin Wenin was watching the disciples bitterly cultivating the Grand Tao of Order. His large eyes didn't blink. Occasionally, his small hands would tremble and the order within a radius of a few meters would change according to his will. Many people were observing Qin Wenin. Meng Xinghuan, Feng Yuexing, and the sect leader of the Divine Sect, this peak high god expert who had almost stepped into the realm of half-step overgod, were also looking at Qin Wenin with anticipation. He discovered a problem. Qin Wenin did not have any divine energy, but he could change the order. His divine energy did not even have the most basic fluctuations of Zhenyuan. No one knew how he did it. Just by trembling his fingertips, The will of heaven and earth would change according to his will. The order of the Grand Tao would also change. A ripple appeared in the sky. Qin Wendian, who was right in front of him, disappeared. When he reappeared, he had already run to another mountain. Shifting positions? Stellar transposition? These divine arts required the support of divine energy and the laws of space. Qin Wenyan did not have any divine energy, nor did she cultivate any laws. She simply cultivated some self-defense techniques that Yi Qinghan taught her. Sister, don't run around. Come back quickly. Qin Chusong jumped in fright and hurriedly called out. Qin Wendian grinned, revealing a row of white teeth. Feeling that he had found the trick, he disappeared from the mountain and reappeared half a meter away from Qin Chusong. This time, it was not just Meng Xinghuan and the others who were shocked. Li Sha and the others were also shocked. Without any spatial ripples or the circulation of divine power, they could not have disappeared for no reason, nor could they have appeared for no reason. No wonder that old thing dared to go against the three major forces for her. It's because of her constitution. Li Sha said to himself in shock. What kind of constitution is this? When Zheng asked curiously, Li Sha shook his head. If the divine bird did not know about this constitution, it was even more impossible for him to know. Qin Chusong and Little Purple were a little confused. They did not know how the little girl did it, so they asked, Sister, how did you do it? I just thought about it. What did I see? I just thought about it. Qin Wendian said seriously. The divine bird obviously did not believe it. Was this a real god? Thinking of this, it directly threw out a divine weapon. It pierced through the void and said to Qin Wendian, Get it for me, and this divine bird will give you a big bottle of divine pills. Is this it? Qin Wendian did not move at all. She reached out and the sharp sword that had pierced through the clouds returned to her hand. Swished at the divine bird's hair stood on end. It flew back to Little Purple's shoulder and screamed, Fuck, where did you come from, pervert? Chapter 755. Time passed, the divine bird continued teasing Qin Wendian, guiding her to unleash more and more powerful attacks. This caused everyone from the Great Tao Divine Sect to be dumbfounded. Qin Wendian was simply here to create a miracle. It was as though everyone in the world had become mortals and she was the only god here. Li Sha and Wen Zheng personally guided Yi Qinghan, even better than Meng Xinghuan and the other core disciples. All sorts of resources and divine treasures were used on Yi Qinghan, yet no one was jealous or envious of him. Because, even if they didn't nurture him, Yi Qinghan wouldn't be lacking in resources. In the forbidden area, Yi Qinghan cleared all distracting thoughts. The runes around the Great Path boundary stone filled the sky, and all of them rushed toward Yi Qinghan. As time passed, the pressure on Yi Qinghan increased. The impact of the Great Path of Order was enough to shatter the soul of a high god, but the soul suppression pearl in his sea of consciousness protected his soul. Although he was tired, he was still clear-headed. In his sea of consciousness, the 11th divine spark was gradually forming. The divine power in his body had been sucked dry, and the spiritual energy, blood energy, and power of faith consumed was hundreds of times more than the other laws and elements. This was the difference between the Great Path Divine Spark and the Elemental Divine Spark. Although Meng Xinghuan and Feng Yuesheng weren't invincible in the same realm, with their Great Path Divine Spark, they could fight to be in the top 10 of the younger generation. Swoosh! Tens of thousands of top-grade divine crystals and demon cores of the Flood Dragon circled in the air and were absorbed by Yi Qinghan. They all turned into energy and rushed into his body, providing energy for the formation of the Great Path of Order Divine Spark. A terrifying aura was crazily rising, and it even broke the barrier set up by Li Sha and Wen Zheng. The seven-colored divine light in the back mountain, accompanied by the 5 elements, turned into a roar of the heavenly dragon. The roar was blocked by the barrier, and the vision of heaven and earth didn't form. Otherwise, it would be earth-shattering. The order of Yi Qinghan's fleshly body was changing. It had changed completely, becoming even more powerful. It was as if his fleshly body was on the verge of becoming a saint. He could break divine weapons with a single punch. His divine robes were shredded by the energy, and his skin was translucent and glowing with divine light. It seemed as if it could be broken with a flick of a finger. However, if divine weapons wanted to break through the defenses of his fleshly body, they would need the support of a god. The laws of order furiously reconstructed his physical body. The 5 elemental elements, the arcana of thunder and the arcana of lightning formed the true 5 elemental Tao body, and it was transforming into the chaotic Tao body of the 9 revolutions. The more he improved, the more apprehensive Yi Qinghan became. This was because his flesh was no longer just flesh. It was completely made up of elements. As long as the elements were not extinguished, he would not die unless an expert instantly suppressed his vitality or soul. But would that person still be human? With blood and no flesh, was he really human? In 3 months, Yi Qinghan had completely replaced his body of elements. His meridians were still there. The 11th divine spark, the first great Tao divine spark. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. He had forged the 5 elements godhoods himself. The blade Tao godhood was a minor path godhood, and he had also forged the spatial godhood. The amount of resources, energy, psyche, and faith power he had consumed to create these 7 godhoods was immeasurable. The 3 elemental laws of wind, thunder, and lightning had been plundered from powerhouses and refined by him. Now, they were completely compatible, no different from having forged them himself. Now that the orderly great Tao divine spark had been formed, the 11 godhoods gathered in the sea of misery, stirring up a storm. He was filled with abundant divine power. His divine power alone was comparable to a half-step lord. However, in terms of explosive power, he still could not be compared to a half-step lord. A half-step lord's explosive attack was equivalent to hundreds of times his. Even if he had the support of all his godhoods, he could only withstand the attack and preserve his life. With a simple green battle robe on him, Yi Qinghan's aura became soul-stirring. There was no trace of a human's aura at all. He was like a god from a mythical world, perfect and flawless. With a slight movement, his robe and long hair fluttered. As soon as he stepped out of the forbidden area at the back of the mountain, the order of the barrier was changed. It could not stop Yi Qinghan at all. Yi Qinghan's eyes were deep and profound, able to see through all illusions. He could even see the dust on the ground and clearly sense the boundary points of space. Raising his eyes, he saw Li Sha and Wenjing looking at him. Nodding lightly, he flashed to the training grounds of Wendao Peak. He discovered that the expressions of the two were somewhat unsightly, as if something had happened. "Why are you like this?" Yi Qinghan asked calmly. "Go look at the foot of the mountain," Li Sha said in a low voice. Yi Qinghan was surprised. He noticed that the disciples of the great Tao sect were silent and the atmosphere was tense. He lifted his foot and stepped to the foot of the mountain. He noticed that the great Tao sect's defensive formation had been activated to the highest level. The formation I was on Tao Enlightenment Peak. There were 4 half-step lords at the foot of the mountain. Each of them led 1,000 powerhouses to surround the great Tao sect tightly. Not even a bird could fly out, let alone a person. Li Sha and Wenjing sighed. They knew that this was unavoidable. It was not entirely because of Yi Qinghan and Qin Wenin, but mainly because of the great Tao of Karma Boundary Stone. The other organizations would not allow another organization to transcend the world and override them. Clear Moon Divine Nation, Qilin Divine Sect, and Void Spirit Divine Sect want us to hand over the great Tao of Karma Boundary Stone. The Divine Treasure Pavilion wants us to hand you and Qin Wendian over. There's still a day left. If we don't agree, they'll attack the great Tao sect by force, Wenjing said helplessly. If it were not for Yi Qinghan's presence, the 4 organizations might have compromised right away. However, Yi Qinghan had Abysmal Lord behind him. If Abysmal Lord were to take action, Yi Qinghan would hold back another half-step lord. The great Tao sect still had a chance. Therefore, Li Sha and Wenjing had delayed for 3 days. If Yi Qinghan did not come out of closed-door cultivation, they would have to forcefully interrupt his cultivation. Feud Yi Qinghan exhaled. He could not count on Abysmal Lord now. In order to cultivate Eagle Strike's 9th heaven in seclusion, Yi Qinghan had blocked his communication talisman long ago. Moreover, he had taken Yan Yunbei as his disciple. He did not want to bother with this cheap disciple anymore. Do you think you can contact Abysmal? If he's willing to take action, we still have a chance. Li Sha looked at Yi Qinghan expectantly and asked in a hoarse voice. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly and shook his head. He said helplessly, Master is cultivating Lord-level secret skills. He's blocked his communication talisman. Unless we go to Abysmal to look for him personally, there's no way to contact him from the outside world. Li Sha and Wen Zheng's expressions changed immediately. It seemed that they had bet on the wrong treasure. But I can hold back a half-step lord. Yi Qinghan took out the 10-direction seal. It was a lord-level god treasure. Although no one could unleash lord-level power, his abilities had improved by leaps and bounds. He alone would have no problem holding back a half-step lord. Li Sha looked slightly better. However, Yi Qinghan alone was useless. Even if he could hold back a half-step lord, he would be at a disadvantage. The two of them could only hold back the other two. Any one of the half-step lords could raise the Great Tao sect to the ground. Once the Great Tao sect was raised, the half-step lord and the other lords could join forces and suppress Yi Qinghan instantly. By then, it would still be 4 against 2, and the Great Tao sect would be destroyed. Chapter 756. 9 Gloom could not do anything, and the Great Path Divine sect could not do anything. For the sake of a boundary marker of the Great Path, it was not worth it to sacrifice the entire Divine sect's inheritance. Yi Qinghan looked at the thousands of experts at the foot of the mountain and knew that it was impossible to fight. He could only run. You can tell me who I am. Not only am I 9 Gloom's disciple, but I also have other inheritances. I'm also the master god of a mythical realm. If they dare to implicate Chu Gu, I'll definitely lead an army of millions to crush the 2 sects, the Divine Nation and the Divine Treasure Pavilion within 1,000 years. Yi Qinghan tightened his grip on frenzy, which he had condensed again. It had become even more powerful. Order was like the heavens, indestructible. Yi Qinghan's cold killing intent was filled with ruthlessness. The 2 half-step lords felt their hair stand on end when they heard it. Li Sha nodded. It was still possible for him to protect a child with no talent. The 3 major organizations dared not take them seriously either. If they were to really end up in a fight where both sides were severely injured, nobody would come out on top. Half-step lords were not that easy to kill. For the first time, Yi Qinghan chose to run away without fighting. He turned and walked toward the Great Path Divine sect's inner sect. He hugged Qin Wenin and tied her to his chest with a piece of cloth. Looking at the confused Qin Wenin, he said gently, Don't be afraid. No one can hurt you. Uncle is here. Don't be afraid. Qin Wenin hugged Yi Qinghan's neck. She was especially sensitive to the threat of death. Qin Chushi trembled all over. He looked at Yi Qinghan expectantly, hoping that Yi Qinghan would take him away as well. However, he was disappointed. Chushi, stay here. When I'm stronger, I'll come back and reunite you with Wenin. Yi Qinghan stared at Qin Chushi and warned in a hoarse voice, Remember, don't be a hero. Staying alive is the most important thing. I'm not a hero because I'll run away too. Uncle, I'll remember. When can I see you again? Qin Chushi's face was covered in tears. He had begged for several years and finally had a family, but it was broken apart again. We'll meet when you grow up. Yi Qinghan smiled and patted Qin Chushi's head. He comforted him softly, Your sister Z will always take care of you. She is your home. I'll leave you some resources, enough for you to cultivate and survive. With that, Yi Qinghan took out a Qianquan ring and handed it to Qin Chusong. Qin Wenin couldn't bear to leave Qin Chusong behind. His face was filled with tears, but Yi Qinghan couldn't be stubborn. If he brought Qin Chusong along, he would definitely die. He wouldn't even be able to withstand the aftershocks. Little Z, I'll hire you for 10 years to protect Chushi. I think you'll take care of him as your family. Here are 300,000 upper-grade god crystals, 30,000 per year. This is your salary. Take good care of him. Yi Qinghan stared at Little Z and said in a low voice. Little Z was extremely respectful. She knew that it was dangerous, But she didn't have any thoughts of leaving. She treated Qin Chushi and Qin Wendian as her family. She was also touched by Yi Qinghan. For 2 orphans, he dared to go against the entire world. No matter how talented Qin Wendian was, no one in the world would dare to do this. Yi Qinghan was the only one. She believed that if she was in trouble, Yi Qinghan would definitely do the same. At this moment, thousands of inner sect disciples were looking at him. They knew that if he rushed out of the mountain gate alone, he would be surrounded by many people. It was possible that not only the old monsters of the God Treasure Pavilion would be attracted, but also the grand elders of the Divine Qilin sect and the Void Spirit sect. After all, Yi Qinghan had killed their chief disciples. Take care. Meng Xinghuan cupped his fists respectfully. Hua Xinyang and Feng Yuesheng had some reluctance and admiration in their eyes. Only the 2 supreme elders had the ability to fight their way out of the encirclement at this time. Whether they could make it out alive was still uncertain. Take care. Yi Qinghan turned around. With one hand protecting Qin Wendian, who was in his embrace, and the other holding his sword, he swept the divine bird away and walked toward the mountain gate. Silly egg, take care. I didn't think you'd be more foolish than us. You actually dared to fight against half-step lords. Bear 1 and Bear 2 waved their large hands and roared reluctantly. Fuck off, you 2 idiots. Use your brains when you do things next time. Don't just blindly fight and kill. Look at how smart my master is. If he can't win, he'll run. If he can win, he can still send a city of experts flying, the divine bird said disdainfully. At the mountain gate, Li Sha and Wenjing saw that Yi Qinghan was ready. They nodded and said, take care. If you can lure the 3 half-step lords away, the 2 of us will quickly kill God Lord Clear Moon and then support you. Whoosh, Yi Qinghan fell silent. Whether or not he could escape now depended entirely on the spatial divine beast, Pai Xiu, and his orderly and spatial divine personas. He could not rely on anything else. It was impossible for him to fight half-step lords to the death. Whoosh, Yi Qinghan soared into the sky. He pointed at the Divine Treasure Pavilion's old monster and the others and said, I killed Jian Lingshu and the sacred Qilin king. I'm the one who took Qin Wendian away. Come after me if you can. Yi Qinghan tore space apart and fled. How could a slight spatial fluctuation escape a half-step lord's ability? I'm going to kill you. The sacred Qilin roared. The Void Spirit Divine Sect's Grand Elder roared and charged out. They shattered the void with a single palm strike and forcefully blasted Yi Qinghan out of the alternate space. Don't hurt that child, the Z family's old monster roared furiously. He had come for Qin Wendian. How could he let her be killed by the aftershocks? The 3 powerhouses charged forward, wanting to stop Yi Qinghan. Each of them had different objectives. Li Sha and Wenjing stared fixedly at the sky, hoping that Yi Qinghan could escape and lure the 3 of them away. As long as they left the Great Divine Sect's territory, the 2 of them could join forces to kill the kingdom's founding ancestor. Yi Qinghan tore space apart again and charged toward the void. The Pai Xiu roared furiously and grew in size. Yi Qinghan sat on its back and sensed the space nodes like a madman. They left their original spot immediately. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the 3 silhouettes sped past. They were actually able to track Yi Qinghan's whereabouts. The sacred Qilin and the Grand Elder did not know that Qin Wendian was a monster. Even if he had some godly abilities, they could not hide their desire to kill Yi Qinghan. Therefore, they attacked mercilessly and recklessly. The aftershocks caused tens of thousands of waves, the Milky Way reversed, and time and space flowed backward. A half-step lord's attack was extraordinary. It was hopeless. Fuck. I told you not to hurt the child in his arms. The old monster of the Z family was furious. He threw a palm strike at the sacred Qilin. Boom! Divine power poured out, shattering space and time. The sacred Qilin was caught off guard and was sent flying. What are you doing? The sacred Qilin's face was covered in dust. It turned to glare at the old monster of the Z family. Capture that bastard alive first. You want his life, but I want the child in his arms. The old monster of the Z family said coldly. Yi Qinghan took the opportunity to escape thousands of miles away after the old monster of the Z family's interference. Use the imprisonment formation and force him out of the space. The Supreme Elder of the Void Spirit Divine Sect released his aura and controlled the surroundings. However, with his strength alone, he could not force Yi Qinghan out of the space. Boom! The old monster of the Z family and the sacred Qilin reacted. They flew into the sky and burrowed into the ground, passing by Yi Qinghan. The three of them used a forbidden technique. The space in the Great Divine Sect's territory froze. They could not fly at all, let alone travel through space. Chapter 757. The space around them had been sealed, and they couldn't move at all. Yi Qinghan was once again blasted out of the space. Holding the child, his eyes were like scorching suns as he stared at the three people to his left, right, and in front of him. He continuously moved backwards, and even the stable space around him was shattered. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The space continued to shatter. The Pishio was absorbed into Yi Qinghan's body, and the divine bird had already entered it. How would it dare to compete with these old monsters? Kid, hand Qin Wenyin over to me, and I won't interfere in your matters, the old monster from the Z family threatened sternly. I don't want to. Qin Wenyin hurriedly grabbed Yi Qinghan, unwilling to leave Yi Qinghan at all. Yi Qinghan grinned evilly and said hoarsely, "Do you think I'll give her to you? You value her not because of her talent, but because of her origin, right? Aren't you the same?" The old monster from the Z family retorted disdainfully. "I don't need to tell you whether I value her origin or not, but I can tell you that if you want to snatch her away, you'll have to step over my dead body." Yi Qinghan rejected the old monster's request without hesitation. "Since you don't want to give me face, I'll step on you." The old monster was white-haired and had the demeanor of an immortal. However, when his expression changed, it became sinister and terrifying. The other two powerhouses looked impatient. He was just a little kid. Was there a need to fight over him like this? Why are you wasting your breath on him? Take that child away. We'll take his life and bury him with my son. Sacred Qilin closed in, wanting to suppress Yi Qinghan. Below the Yuan city, everyone was looking up at Yi Qinghan in the sky. During this period of time, everyone was talking about Yi Qinghan. That night, he had killed thousands of assassins, and his blood had stained the streets for 5 kilometers. Today, he had confronted 3 half-step lords, but he had not said a single word of apology. What exactly was it that was supporting his conviction? The disciples of the Great Divine Sect clenched their fists tightly. Their blood boiled as they looked at Yi Qinghan. They knew that today's situation would definitely become an eternal legend. It would be impossible for a low-rank upper god priest to take on 3 half-step lords single-handedly. Regardless of the outcome, it would be an unbreakable legend. Qin Chusong held little Z's hand tightly. His eyes were ferocious and his body was trembling. Little Z wanted to hold Qin Chust's head to prevent him from seeing this cruel scene, but he stubbornly refused to turn his head and just stared at the sky. Wen Zheng was about to make a move, but Li Sha kept him in place. He won't be able to escape. If we don't make a move, we won't have any chance at all. Once that old thing from the Z clan and the others suppress Yi Qinghan, they will definitely join forces to suppress us. Wen Zheng hurriedly transmitted his voice. Wait, if we make a move now, we'll have even less of a chance. Let's pray that Yi Qinghan escapes and lures the 3 of them away. Only then will we have a chance. If we make a move now, we'll be forcing Yi Qinghan to stay here and fight to the death. The outcome will be decided then. The 3 of us won't be able to defeat the 4 of them. Although Li Sha specialized in killing, he was not stupid. He analyzed the situation clearly. Will he be able to escape? Will there still be a chance? Wen Zheng was in slight disbelief. In such a situation, even a half-step lord like him would not be able to escape, let alone Yi Qinghan. Perhaps there will be a chance. Li Sha forced a smile. He was not confident that he could escape from the joint attack of the 3 powerhouses. Qin Yu Great Ancestor frowned. He looked at Li Sha and said in a deep voice, "Fellow Li, I have no objections to splitting the world into 4. That's why I've never forced you to do anything. It's fine if you seal the boundary marker of the great Tao, but you want to kill my kingdom's crown prince. That's not giving me any face at all. Don't put on an act. 3,000 years ago, didn't you send dozens of powerhouses to kill my divine sect's top king? In the end, he only managed to escape with heavy injuries. In less than 3 months, his vitality was gone, and his body and Tao vanished. Did this old man say anything? Besides, I'm much more benevolent than you. I didn't send dozens of powerhouses to kill him. Yi Qinghan was just one person. Moreover, he was only a middle-level great perfection powerhouse when he attacked. If they were killed by him, I can only say that they're trash. Li Sha retorted coldly. Qin Yu great ancestor gasped. Judging from Li Sha's tone, it did not seem like he was lying. Yi Qinghan really was a middle-level great perfection powerhouse when he attacked. He had crossed realms and killed 2 kings. It was just that he had only recently broken through to become a higher-level god. Who exactly is he? It's impossible for Qin Yu Dimension to have such a powerhouse, Qin Yu great ancestor asked in shock. He's Nine Gloom's disciple and the Lord God of a mythical dimension. As for his other identities, I don't know either, Li Sha replied coldly. The identity of a Lord God of a mythical dimension couldn't scare a true powerhouse. A half-step lord could forcefully flatten a small dimension like that. However, Nine Gloom's identity was more frightening. That old thing was the real old monster. He was truly invincible below the Lord God level. He could fight against 2 half-step lords alone. Which old monster wouldn't give him face? Nine Gloom's disciple? He has other identities? Qin Yu great ancestor's eyes flashed. Yi Qinghan hadn't killed Qin Shenluo yet, so there was no need to be calculative with him. However, she didn't think of reminding the other 3 old men either. Yi Qinghan was constantly forced to retreat. He took out the 10-direction seal with his left hand and spun it in front of his chest. The seal spun in front of his chest and shot out divine light, protecting him. Yi Qinghan took out the reincarnation mirror. He held his saber in one hand and the reincarnation mirror in the other. He was about to counterattack. Kid, don't blame me if you don't know what's good for you. The old monster from the Z family lost his patience. He cut off half the void with his palm and pressed down on Yi Qinghan. Boom! Yi Qinghan had no intention of dodging at all. The veins on his right arm bulged as he raised his saber and slashed. The saber slammed into the giant palm, and Yi Qinghan borrowed the force to fly hundreds of miles away. He managed to dodge the attacks of the other 2 powerhouses. His elemental body shattered, but there was no blood spilling out. He recovered in the blink of an eye. Yi Qinghan seemed to be in a sorry state as he flew backward, but he was unscathed. The reincarnation mirror suddenly erupted with a terrifying energy, drowning out the vision in front of him. The entire sky fell into darkness. Boom! The 3 powerhouses unleashed their powers at the same time. The divine light crushed everything and blocked the reincarnation light. Yi Qinghan was sent flying by the vast force and couldn't borrow any more force. Imprison his physical body. The 3 powerhouses formed seals with their palms and mobilized the laws of the Great Path. The momentum of heaven and earth was forcibly conscripted, crushing the order and imprisoning Yi Qinghan in the sky above De Yuan City. He couldn't move at all. Wen Zheng was about to make a move, but he was stopped by Li Sha. Wait! It was the first time Li Sha was so patient. If it was before, he would have rushed up to fight. What are you waiting for? Wen Zheng was unwilling to give up. Once Yi Qinghan died, it would be 4 against 2. The Great Path Holy Sect would have no chance. At this moment, Yi Qinghan suddenly roared into the sky. His divine body was changing. Dragon blood boiled, dragon scales appeared, and his divine body kept growing longer. His dragon body twisted and shattered the imprisoned space. A giant dragon of thousands of feet coiled in space and time. Its huge eyes were like the scorching sun overlooking all living beings. Roared at the giant dragon roared softly. It was so deafening that the blood and chi of all the heroes within thousands of miles stagnated. Chapter 758. The dragon's tail smashed thousands of miles into the sky. The imprisonment formation could not stop the giant dragon. The three half-step lords broke out in cold sweat. It was their first time seeing a real giant dragon, and it was transformed from a human. "He's a chaos dragon, not a human," the old monster from the Z family murmured in shock. "Catch him. Don't let him escape." "Ha, no one can stop us if the heavens grant us glory. The giant dragon tribe is full of treasures." The giant dragon tribe that disappeared for countless years has reappeared. The three powerhouses were overjoyed after recovering from their shock. Yi Qinghan transformed into a colossal dragon. With a roar, he shattered the shackles and soared through the heavens, charging into the secret zone. There were ancient, ferocious beasts in the depths of the secret zone. Some of these ferocious beasts were no weaker than half-step lords. Whoosh! Time and space were torn apart. A special depression appeared under the giant dragon's armpit, trapping him inside and blocking the aftershock of the wind. Yi Qinghan disappeared in a flash and charged out of the sky above Big Abyss City. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The three powerhouses used stellar transposition and broke through the void to pursue him. 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles. Not only did the three powerhouses fail to close the distance, but they also widened the distance and gradually disappeared into the horizon. Li Sha exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. A murderous glint flashed in his eyes. A strange-shaped golden sword appeared in his hand, its scabbard shining with golden light. Grand Elder Qingyue's pupils shrank. She was on high alert and quickly retreated. Within 3 breaths, Yi Qinghan charged out of the Great Path Divine Sect's territory. At that moment, Li Sha and Wenzheng looked at each other and charged toward Grand Elder Qingyue at the same time. Boom! The Great Path Divine Sect's defense formation was activated to the highest level at the same time. Mighty divine power surged, and the aftershock swept toward Big Abyss City. There were heavy casualties at the foot of the mountain. All the people in Big Abyss City fled the city and fled into the distance. They did not dare to interfere in the battle here. Boom! Li Sha and Wenzheng joined forces and sent Grand Elder Qingyue flying. The aftershock killed many of the 4 forces experts. Cough cough, Grand Elder Qingyue coughed up blood. Her dragon robe was cut open. "Do you want to fight to the death?" Grand Elder Qingyue threatened. "Let's fight to the death then. It's better than being cornered by you. Kill. Cut the crap." Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The gleam of the sword and the shadow of the blade shone brilliantly. Once the sword was unsheathed, how could ordinary people compare to a half-step lord sword Dao? Li Feng and Gu Qingyu were much inferior in front of him. Wenzheng held a long sword in his hand and attacked Grand Ancestor Qingyue. He didn't care about the ordinary high gods. With 2 half-step lords attacking one, the clear moon Grand Ancestor was forced to retreat repeatedly. In the blink of an eye, he was severely injured. It was difficult to defend against one, and the second one was a fierce attack. Wenzheng would stab him. Half-step lords' abilities were similar. Under normal circumstances, death would occur at any time in a one-on-one battle, let alone 2 against 1. Li Sha's sword was as fast as lightning. He and the sword became one, and the sword chi pierced through the ground. Once a high god was hit, he would either die or be severely injured. At this moment, he turned into a ray of rainbow and broke through Grand Ancestor Qingyue's defense, piercing through her chest from the back. Bang! Great Ancestor Qingyu screamed and smashed towards the foot of the Great Divinity Sect. However, it was Wenzheng who was facing her. She lost control of her divine body and crashed into Wenzheng's sword. "Damn it! You 3 bastards! Stupid pigs!" Grand Ancestor Qingyu roared furiously. At this moment, she could not blame Wenzheng and Li Sha. She could only blame herself for choosing to work with useless teammates. For the sake of Yi Qinghan, she had mobilized 3 half-step lords and left herself to Wenzheng and Li Sha. Boom! Grand Ancestor Qinyu chose to self-destruct her divine body. Blood stained the sky, and the aftershock hit the mountain range. None of the thousands of experts at the foot of the Great Divinity Sect managed to escape. They were all killed by Qingyu herself. Great Abyss City's walls collapsed. Even though the Great Divinity Sect had a terrifying defense formation, the powerhouses who reinforced the formation's defenses were sent flying backward, coughing up blood. When Zheng faced the force of Grand Ancestor Qin Yu's self-destruction head-on, he was sent crashing into the Great Divinity Sect's defense barrier and his blood-stained Great Divinity Mountain. Whoosh! The godhead broke through the clouds and disappeared from everyone's sight in the blink of an eye. No one could stop it. Grand Ancestor Qin Yu's soul had driven the godhead away. Cough, cough, when Zheng coughed up blood, but he quickly stabilized his agitated vitality. He exchanged glances with Li Sha and said in a low voice, "It's okay. Let's go after them." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The two powerhouses also charged toward the secret zone. There's a chance. Meng Xinghuan and the others clenched their fists. As long as Yi Qinghan could hold off a half-step lord, it was still unknown who would win. Open the formation and save the people of Great Abyss City. The Great Divinity Sect Master was covered in blood. He had been injured by the aftershock of Grand Ancestor Qin Yu's self-destruction. A half-step lord was on a completely different level from a perfected high god. No matter how strong he was, he could not hold off a half-step lord. There were not many freaks like Yi Qinghan. He had countless divine weapons on him: the Shifang seal, the reincarnation mirror, the 7-foot craze, and the elemental 5 elements Tao constitution. It was not surprising that he could cross ranks. Everyone from the Great Divinity Sect rushed to the foot of the mountain to capture the severely injured powerhouses, suppress their godheads, and save the people of Great Abyss City. At that moment, Yi Qinghan was not interested in fighting at all. He could not fight either. As long as he could not outrun the three of them, he would definitely be beaten to death. There was no chance at all. After escaping from the imprisonment, Yi Qinghan reverted to his original form and muttered, "Traceless great Tao, traceless myriad techniques, traceless wind, evade 9 heavens." Traceless wind was everywhere. Yi Qinghan's silhouette suddenly flashed, and countless silhouettes charged in all directions. His original form could not be seen at all. There were even dozens of silhouettes that charged toward the 3 half-step lords. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. When thousands of silhouettes charged in all directions, the sacred Qilin and the rest were stunned. They struck out at the same time and shattered the silhouettes before them. However, there was no trace of blood. Clearly, they were not Yi Qinghan's original form. Don't let him escape. Whoosh. The 3 half-step lords' sword gleams swept across, shattering many silhouettes. However, none of them were Yi Qinghan's original form. The remaining silhouettes became more and more indistinct, as if they were real or illusory. Damn it, what kind of movement technique is that? It's the witch tribe's wind mark. At full mastery of the Great Divinity Realm, one can transform into countless silhouettes and interpret traceless wind. The old monster from the Z family was on good terms with the organizations that had been passed down since ancient times. He had learned many secrets and even found out Qin Wentian's true constitution. Boom! The 3 powerhouses joined forces and their aura soared into the galaxy. At the same time, they shattered thousands of silhouettes. None of them were Yi Qinghan's original form. After him, he's from the colossal dragon tribe. He'll definitely enter the depths of the secret zone. The 3 powerhouses charged into the sky above the secret zone and advanced rapidly. They had gone in the wrong direction because Yi Qinghan was not fleeing toward the depths of the secret zone at all. Instead, he was heading southwest. That was the border river that led to the Greedy Wolf dimension. Through the border river, he could enter the Greedy Wolf dimension and return to the mythical realm. Yi Qinghan concealed his aura and hid behind a mountain. He watched the 3 powerhouses head toward the depths of the secret zone and smirked coldly. He put away Berserk and charged in the direction of the border river. Yi Qinghan did not dare to fly. He did not dare to alert the 3 powerhouses. If he could leave secretly, he would do so. He could not afford to be conspicuous. A day later, Yi Qinghan was still in the secret zone. However, he was at the western border of the secret zone. He would be able to leave the secret zone very soon. Chapter 759. The 3 powerhouses searched the entire central area of the secret zone but could not find any trace of Yi Qinghan. They immediately gave the order to seal off the realm and prepared to conduct a thorough search. When Sacred Kylan and the rest met Li Sha and Wen Zheng, their eyes were filled with murderous intent. However, now that Yi Qinghan had escaped, it would be useless for them to continue fighting. Instead, it would give Yi Qinghan a chance to escape. As for Li Sha and Wen Zheng, they were at a disadvantage when it was 2 against 3, so they would not take the initiative to provoke them. In the Clear Moon realm, every bush and tree was an enemy, especially in the Clear Moon Divine Nation. They had sealed off their nation and their army was on high alert. Even without the Clear Moon Great Ancestor, a half-step lord, there were not many organizations who dared to provoke them. The 3 holy sects did not even attack the Divine Nation, let alone the Z family and the Divine Treasure Pavilion. The Clear Moon Great Ancestor had only self-destructed his divine body. His soul did not die. As long as there was an opportunity, he could rebuild his divine body at any time. No one could withstand the revenge of a half-step lord. Li Sha and Wen Zheng no longer cared about Yi Qinghan. They also did not ask the 3 organizations to capture Yi Qinghan. Instead, they forcefully broke the seal of the Great Path of Karma boundary stone and comprehended the Great Path of Karma. The Divine Treasure Pavilion was not interested in whether the Great Path Holy Sect comprehended the Great Path of Karma or not. Now, they only wanted to capture Yi Qinghan and bring Qin Wenyan back. Sacred Kylan and Wen Zheng could not do anything about the Great Path Holy Sect. They could only let them comprehend the Great Path. At the moment, Yi Qinghan brought Qin Wenyan along as they walked through the mountains. They did not interact with outsiders, nor did they enter large cities. They did not even enter small towns. They ate wild fruits and drank from streams. Apart from the Great Path Holy Sect's territory, other places were searching for Yi Qinghan's whereabouts. Portraits were everywhere. As long as it was an adult man with a 4- or 5-year-old child, regardless of their cultivation base, they would be captured first. If they dared to resist, they would be killed on the spot. In the worst case, they would implicate their clansmen. For a time, no one dared to bring a baby girl out, especially those under the age of 7 or 8. If they went out alone, they would be interrogated. Yi Qinghan tried a few times, but he failed to cross the World River. The 3 experts were stationed near the World River, and a large number of soldiers and siege divine crossbows were all aimed at the World River. Once Yi Qinghan appeared above the World River, he would be drowned in an instant. No matter how strong his defense was, he would still be killed and fall into the World River. Qin Wenyan was very sensible. If Yi Qinghan didn't say anything, she wouldn't say anything. Yi Qinghan hid in a mountain range and looked at the border river from afar. There was no fluctuation of divine power and his eyes were deep. No one knew what he was thinking. What should we do? Yi Qinghan muttered to himself as he tapped his fingers on the table. Raid their old home. First, destroy a subsect under their territory. After destroying a subsect, we will move to another place. I don't believe that they won't go back to defend. The divine bird suddenly said. Yi Qinghan's eyes lit up. The divine bird's suggestion was a good idea. They would attack their old home first. Yi Qinghan carried Qin Wenyan and walked towards the territory of the Void Spirit Divine Sect. Void God City was one of the stronger cities of the Void Spirit Divine Sect. There were powerful subsects and the City Lord Manor also served the Divine Sect. The God Treasure Pavilion also had a branch here. Yi Qinghan hid Qin Wenyan in his arms and tied her with divine clothes. He quietly entered the city and said to her gently, "Close your eyes. It will be over in a while." But Yi Qinghan tapped on Qin Wenyan's neck and directly knocked her out. The God Treasure Pavilion was located on a bustling street. It occupied tens of hectares of land, and it was unknown how many divine treasures were hidden inside. At night, Yi Qinghan quietly entered the God Treasure Pavilion and wantonly plundered the resources with the divine bird. Even the treasury was broken into by the divine bird, and the large interspatial ring was filled to the brim. The divine bird felt that it was not satisfied. It actually burned down the God Treasure Pavilion with fire, which immediately alarmed several experts. As soon as they rushed out, they were killed by Yi Qinghan with a single slash. Without killing indiscriminately, Yi Qinghan turned and left, heading straight for the subsect of the Void Spirit Divine Sect. It was located in the west of the city. Right now, They were still in a state of seclusion and had no idea that Yi Qinghan had already killed his way to the foot of their mountain. Yi Qinghan used the law of space and did not trigger their defensive barrier. Everything went on as usual. First, he took the resources, then burned down the subsect. Experts of the mid-god shrine realm and above were killed. The three empties policy was to plunder everything, burn everything, and kill all experts. The fifth-grade divine flames could not be extinguished at all. Two flames soared into the sky, illuminating the world. Many people screamed and fled. The last one was the city lord's residence. The city lord was a middle-aged man dressed in embroidered robes. He looked at the two flames in confusion. Before he could react, a youth appeared in front of him. Who else could it be but Yi Qinghan? The city lord did not recognize Yi Qinghan, but there was an unconscious little girl in his arms. She was so young, not much different from the portrait. He was immediately shocked. "You have guts." The city lord was shocked. Being stared at by Yi Qinghan, he did not even dare to speak loudly. "Not only do I have guts, but they also exceed your imagination." Yi Qinghan slapped the city lord's face and stepped on him. A majestic low-level high god could not even dodge a simple slap from Yi Qinghan. The city lord struggled pathetically, but Yi Qinghan's leg was like an entire world. He could not move. "I won't kill you, but you have to tell those three old things that I can't leave the clear moon plane. I will visit all your cities. Right now, I only kill the experts. When I run out of patience, I will slaughter all your cities. I will even go to your headquarters." Boom. Yi Qinghan was simple and violent. He lifted his leg and kicked the city lord's head. The city lord was almost kicked to death. His body crashed into several walls and fainted. Yi Qinghan flew into the sky and disappeared. Before the three experts could react, Yi Qinghan uprooted 3 more cities, 3 subsects, 3 gods' treasure pavilions, and 3 city lords' mansions. He used the same method. The 3 strongest forces in each city were uprooted and their buildings were razed to the ground. The great elder of the Void Spirit sect was furious. The great elder of the Z family was even more furious. They did not expect that Yi Qinghan would not only not escape, but also run into their territory. Yi Qinghan did not follow any path. It was impossible to guess which city his next target would be. However, wherever he appeared, the forces of the gods' treasure pavilions were uprooted. The subsects of the Void Spirit sect and the Divine Kirin sect were also destroyed. Not a single high-level member was left alive. These high-level members were the direct descendants of the 3 old monsters. It was painful to kill even one of them, let alone all of them. Moreover, they were killed continuously. The Divine Kirin and the other 2 finally gave up guarding the border river. Instead, they sent a large number of experts to the border river to block the exit. The 3 of them began to search for Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan came and went without a trace, shuttling back and forth between the major cities of the plain. The 3 great experts were completely helpless against him. Although it seemed like a slow process, it caused the 3 great powers great heartache. The gods' treasure pavilions were the most unlucky. They had sub-pavilions in almost every city. In the end, they were scared by Yi Qinghan. All the gods' treasure pavilions began to retreat. They did not even dare to do business during the day. The gods' treasure pavilions were paralyzed. They did not listen to the orders of the general pavilion. The losses of the gods' treasure pavilions were immeasurable. Gradually, the city lords of the major cities and the suzerains of the subsects began to follow the example of the gods' treasure pavilions. They disbanded their subsects and the city lords' mansions were empty. Chapter 760. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Without a half-step lord, the kingdom of God did not dare to interfere in the operation to capture Yi Qinghan. Hence, they managed to avoid a disaster. Yi Qinghan could not help but groan after missing 2 cities in a row. This group of people was such a big target that it was impossible for them to run far with the resources. It was very likely that they were hiding in one of the mountain gates in the city. He had to capture them, even if he had to implicate the people who were harboring them. He had to make sure that the people from the 3 major organizations had nowhere to hide and no one would dare to help them. The next day, Yi Qinghan wore a bamboo hat and hid Qin Wenyan in his arms. He held a sharp sword in his hand and exuded an imposing aura. For the past few days, everyone was on edge. No one wanted to cause trouble. Even the city guards did not dare to make a sound when they saw such a conspicuous man in black walking into the city. They pretended not to see him. Everyone knew that Yi Qinghan used the 7-foot-long frenzy sword. Who would dare to offend an expert swordsman? Yi Qinghan swaggered into the city. He found the most luxurious restaurant and stepped in right away. Give me a private room by the window. Serve me the best food and wine, as well as the flesh of mutated beasts, Yi Qinghan said in a hoarse voice. All right, come with me. The waiter was excited. He had asked for the best food and wine, as well as the flesh of mutated beasts. This must be a big customer. How would he dare to offend him? He immediately led Yi Qinghan to the 2nd floor. In the private room, the waiter did not leave. He waited quietly for Yi Qinghan's orders. While waiting for the food and wine, Yi Qinghan looked at the waiter and took out 10 high-grade divine crystals. He said calmly, if there's any important information in the city recently, tell me everything and these divine crystals are yours. The waiter's eyes lit up at this moment. 10 middle-grade spirit stones was his monthly salary. 10 upper-grade spirit stones was something he couldn't earn in a year. Important news. Of course, it's about death god Yi Qinghan roaming around and killing the subordinates of the 2 major sects and the God's Treasure Pavilion. Right now, the God's Treasure Pavilion and the 2 major sects are so scared that they don't even dare to show their faces. Our city belongs to the Divine Qilin sect's territory. Right now, the Divine Qilin sect and the God's Treasure Pavilion's branch sects have already taken the resources and fled. I heard that there are too many resources and too many direct subordinates, so they have all gone into hiding. The waiter said softly. Yi Qinghan took out another 10 high-grade divine crystals and said calmly, continue. The waiter's hands started to tremble. 20 high-grade divine crystals was an astronomical figure for a low-level god priest. It was equivalent to 200,000 low-grade divine crystals. Furthermore, people who had high-grade divine crystals wouldn't be willing to exchange them for low-grade divine crystals. I heard that they are hiding in the Dragon Tiger stronghold. That's a bandit lair. Those bandits often work together with them to reap rewards, so their relationship is pretty good. Everyone in the city is well aware of this, so they don't dare to provoke the Dragon Tiger stronghold. Those bandits kill without batting an eyelid. A few days ago, they even massacred a village. The waiter said softly. His eyes were filled with anticipation as he looked at the divine crystals. However, he didn't dare to take them. Take them. Go and get the dishes sent up quickly. I'm in a hurry, Yi Qinghan said calmly. The waiter was excited. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to be willing to give him the divine crystals. He hurriedly took the divine crystals and knelt on the ground. He said respectfully, Esteemed one, don't worry. I didn't say anything. You didn't ask anything either. Yi Qinghan nodded his head in satisfaction. There weren't many waiter as obedient and sensible as him in this world. The waiter received the benefits and immediately went to rush them. Very quickly, the best dishes and meat were delivered. Even though the meat was roasted, it didn't lose much of its blood and qi energy. Yi Qinghan sealed the door and carried Qin Wenyan out. Gulp, Qin Wenyan rubbed her stomach and had an embarrassed look on her face. She said in a crisp voice, Uncle, I'm hungry. Eat as much as you can. The next time you eat will be tomorrow. Yi Qinghan smiled. Qin Wenyan immediately started wolfing down the food. She wasn't big, but her appetite wasn't small. A large piece of roasted meat was swallowed by her. Yi Qinghan drank the strong wine alone and casually ate a few mouthfuls of the dishes. He waited for Qin Wenyan to finish eating. After eating for a full hour, the little lass covered her round stomach and lay comfortably on the chair. She asked curiously, Uncle, where are we going? We are going to kill people. Are you afraid? Yi Qinghan felt a little heartache for this little fellow. She was even younger than his daughter, but she had to follow him everywhere. She was used to seeing blood and corpses. This was really not right. I'm not afraid. With Uncle here, I'm not afraid to go anywhere. Qin Wendian looked at Yi Qinghan with a childlike gaze. During these few days, Yi Qinghan had killed a few people in front of her. She was already used to seeing blood. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly. If it was possible, he would rather Qin Wendian be afraid and live the life of a child. Let's go. I hope we can leave this damnable world as soon as possible. Yi Qinghan reached out and carried Qin Wendian. He used his belt to tie her up and placed her inside the black veil. Even if the black veil was torn, his loose robes would still be able to cover her. She might not be able to recognize their true identities. Yi Qinghan gripped his sword and went downstairs. The waiter bowed and said in a low voice, "Esteemed Lord, a total of 15 high-grade divine crystals." Yi Qinghan tossed out 15 high-grade divine crystals and over 100 low-grade divine crystals. He calmly said, "I'll reward you with the rest." "Many thanks, esteemed Lord." The shopkeeper was dumbfounded. He had never seen such a generous person, casually tossing out a few hundred low-grade divine crystals. This wasn't some super big city. There were some young masters here, but none of them were as generous as Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan turned and left. According to the directions given by the waiter, he walked out of the city and headed straight for Mount Longhu. Mount Longhu was the largest mountain in the vicinity of Longhu City. Depending on the mountain, it was natural for bandits to occupy the mountains and call themselves the kings of the mountains. There were some experts gathered on Mount Longhu, and they were vicious and ruthless. Sometimes, they even dared to kill officials. Killing experts was a common occurrence. What was even more hateful was that if a commoner offended these people, it was very likely that the entire village and clan would be implicated. Yi Qinghan seemed to be walking aimlessly in the mountain range, getting closer and closer to Mount Longhu. Recently, Mount Longhu had been very quiet. Immortal Qi lingered around, and many strongholds were in a state of high alert. Yi Qinghan's appearance in the mountain range attracted the attention of the bandits. However, they didn't know that the person approaching them was the recently famous killing god Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan hid Qin Wendian in his bosom, sword in hand. The four bandits glanced at each other and laughed evilly. How about it? Seems like his cultivation is only at the intermediate god level. Do you want to kill him? Don't cause trouble. I heard that the boss forbade us from fighting these few days. A skinny monkey-like man with sharp eyes looked at Yi Qinghan's calm and composed appearance. He didn't want to provoke him. I also don't recommend fighting. Let's report back. This guy is wearing a bamboo hat. He doesn't have good intentions. Another bandit reminded. Just as the four of them were discussing, Yi Qinghan had already reached the checkpoint. Stop. Don't you know that this is the private territory of Longhu Stronghold? Scram. The skinny monkey-like man coldly said. Yi Qinghan unsheathed his sword. The sword light suddenly split into three and pierced through the heads of the three bandits. The divine sword itself pierced through the skinny monkey-like man's throat. His life force was completely destroyed, and even his godhead couldn't escape. Boom! The four bandits didn't even have the chance to attack. They had just summoned their divine weapons when they crashed to the ground. Chapter 761. Yi Qinghan sheathed his sword and walked towards Mount Longhu. The four corpses fell to the ground after being blown by the wind. The sky was not dark yet and the setting sun was setting in the west. It was a blood-red color and appeared particularly bleak. A slender shadow dragged far away as he walked towards the waist of Mount Longhu. Along the way, the scouts at the checkpoints did not even have time to warn him before the sword radiance cut through their throats. Their bodies collapsed and they died on the spot. There were many houses at the waist of Mount Longhu. This was only the periphery. The real interior was on the other side of the cliff. There was only a narrow path leading to the entrance. It was easy to defend but hard to attack. However, on the other side of the cliff, there was no way to escape other than to defend. Once it was breached, it would be like catching a turtle in a jar. Yi Qinghan stepped in front of the stronghold and shattered the defensive enchantment with one strike. The door was blasted open. The great Nirvana sword technique's attack was unparalleled and unstoppable. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yi Qinghan did not waste words. He had come here today for no other reason than to slaughter everyone on this mountain. Blood flowed down the cliff. There were thousands of experts within Mount Longhu stronghold and close to 10,000 outside. However, their cultivations were not strong. Even outside the stronghold, there were female cultivators and child slaves who had been captured. They had been driven out to serve as cannon fodder. Yi Qinghan gripped his sword and leaned forward, indicating for them to leave. However, some of them were slaves and did not know how to resist. Obeying orders was their destiny, so they charged towards Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan did not show mercy. He pulled out his sword and killed. The corpses rolled down the mountain. Scram! Yi Qinghan shouted sternly. Some of the children's eyes flashed with hatred as they fled towards the foot of the mountain. Once the children fled, the female cultivators also began to flee. Hundreds of slaves fled down the mountain. Who are you? My Mount Longhu has no enmity with you. The third boss of Mount Longhu held a large saber in his hand and looked down with hundreds of experts. He stared at Yi Qinghan with a bad feeling in his heart. There is indeed no enmity. You just took in the wrong people, so you will be buried with them. There were 100 reasons for not wanting to kill someone, but there were 10,000 reasons for wanting to kill someone. Yi Qinghan's sword-wielding hand trembled. The scabbard turned into a long rainbow and pierced through the corpse of an expert. The great Nirvana sword art erupted. Along with the profound mysteries of order, it turned into countless sword chi that pierced through countless experts' bodies. Once they were pierced through, the order of their corporeal bodies would be completely changed. They would turn into a pool of blood and bones that fell limp on the ground. Whoosh! A rain of blood fell from the sky, roaring towards the foot of the mountain. Corpses rolled along the river of blood, just like hell. Yi Qinghan shielded Qin Wenyan with one hand, not willing to let her see such a bloody scene. With a swing of his sword, he reaped the lives of over 10 experts with a single slash. He didn't even blink as he directly rushed towards the third leader. You're Yi Qinghan. The third boss was terrified. Dragon Tiger Mountain had only taken in the experts of the God's Treasure Pavilion and Divine Sect. Other than Yi Qinghan, who would find them here? Bang! The veil shattered. Yi Qinghan no longer concealed himself. He sheathed his sword, unsheathed his saber, and a tyrannical aura surged into the clouds. It's really him. Heavens! It's the Death God. The area around Dragon Tiger Mountain had long been suppressed by a forbidden technique, so it was impossible to fly. This was Dragon Tiger Mountain's method of self-preservation, but now it had become a trap of their own making. Since they couldn't fly, they could only run. If they fell off the cliff, their divine body would be smashed into smithereens. But that didn't count for much. The key was that there were many mutated beasts living below the cliff, and the poisonous gas was even more intense. Godhoods couldn't survive below. There was only one path, and now that Yi Qinghan had blocked it, there was no way to escape. Boom! Yi Qinghan's saber slashed out, his aura surging into the Milky Way, directly severing the peak of the mountain. The saber in the third boss's hand was directly split in half, and his body was pierced through. The tens of people behind him died on the spot. I don't want to die. Run! Shio, that some people panicked and chose to jump off the cliff. The cliff was thousands of feet high. Jumping off it was a narrow escape, but if they didn't jump, they would definitely die. Yi Qinghan had no interest in these small fries. Since they wanted to jump off the cliff, then let them do so. They followed the narrow path into Dragon Tiger Stronghold. Yi Qinghan and his saber alone could completely block off the path. The people inside were like turtles in a jar, waiting for Yi Qinghan to slaughter them. Yi Qinghan, you and I have no enmity. If you want to kill people from God's Treasure Pavilion and Divine Sect, then come and get it. Why kill my brothers? Are you bullying Dragon Tiger Mountain because there's no one here? The first boss of Dragon Tiger Mountain rushed out with the second boss and fourth boss, roaring at Yi Qinghan. Yes, I'm bullying you because there's no one here. Today, none of you can leave. Stay, Yi Qinghan said indifferently. The first boss was speechless. Yi Qinghan was too domineering. He had no intention of reconciling. Wait, don't you want to kill people from God's treasure pavilion? I'll give it to you. No one in Dragon Tiger Mountain can compete with you. We won't provoke you, so let us go. What do you think? The first boss was a mid-level high god. When had he ever admitted defeat? He didn't dare to go against Yi Qinghan. Unfortunately, Yi Qinghan wasn't interested in their surrender. They were just a bunch of trash. If he killed them, then so be it. Even if the heavenly Tao didn't need him to do it, he would just do it. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. I want no one in the world to take them in. Yi Qinghan clenched his frenzy hammer and charged into the crowd. His long saber swept across with boundless strength, and his boiling dragon blood suppressed the blood and chi of the heroes. Many people were swept off the cliff by his aura. Boom! The blade light was boundless, and screams could be heard everywhere. Corpses kept falling, and some people were cut into pieces. Blood poured down like rain. The ferocious beasts underground were especially excited. They raised their heads and roared, as if they were waiting for flesh and blood. Any expert who fell down would not be able to survive. The mutant beasts roared and became more excited. They bit each other and killed those who fell. The people from God's treasure pavilion and Shinzong were terrified. This was a dead end. There was no other way to escape. They were caught by Yi Qinghan like turtles in a jar. Hundreds of higher-ups squeezed in the hall of the cave and screamed. Yi Qinghan had already torn apart the corpses of the people from Dragon Tiger Mountain and stepped into the entrance of the cave. Yi Qinghan, you're crazy. You lunatic, this has nothing to do with us. You're killing the innocent. The pavilion master of God's treasure pavilion and the elders of Shinzong shouted. They couldn't win, but they hoped that Yi Qinghan would have some humanity. They had brought their families with them. Their wives and children were there, and they even had children of a few years old. Unfortunately, Yi Qinghan didn't have much humanity. As he said, he wasn't a hero. He only wanted to protect what he wanted to protect. Yi Qinghan shook his head and said hoarsely, I'm sorry. It's better for you to die than for us to die. What? Yi Qinghan raised his saber and killed everyone in sight. The aftermath killed the weak, not even the women and children. Blood flowed in the hall of the cave. Chapter 762. At Mount Longhu, a cold wind blew and the smell of blood filled the air. Ferocious beasts roared and the mountains trembled. The child slaves and female slaves spoke intermittently. They only knew that a young man had killed his way into Mount Longhu. Many masters took the risk to enter and found that Mount Longhu had been wiped out. There were a few bloody words carved on the mountain that could steal people's souls. Those who shelter the three forces will be killed without mercy. This explosive news instantly spread throughout the entire plain. The three great cultivators roared. They couldn't find any traces of Yi Qinghan, and he would instantly teleport after killing his way to a certain place. It was a situation of retreating when the enemy advanced and attacking when the enemy retreated. If this continued, the three great forces would collapse before Yi Qinghan could kill them all. The three masters pressed toward the great divinity sect and angrily asked about Yi Qinghan's background. They were ready to pay him back in his own coin. Li Sha came out of seclusion and said calmly, I only know that he is a disciple of 9 serenities. Go find him. Gulp, Sacred Kylan and the other two gasped. The master of 9 serenities was a legend who had never been defeated. He was the number 1 person below the master of divinity. He had lived longer than their fathers and had seen the 4th generation Grand Witch God. He was not someone to be trifled with. Damn it, are we just going to let them kill like this? The old monster of the Z clan was not satisfied. The huge Shenbao pavilion was paralyzed and lost hundreds of millions in a day. As long as Yi Qinghan was alive, the branch would not dare to do business. Now that they could not even save their own lives, all the major forces were in seclusion. They did not dare to shelter the people of the 3 forces. They could only hide in the mountains or risk death by moving to the headquarters of the divinity sects. No one dared to offend a madman like Yi Qinghan. When he went crazy, he would massacre entire sects and clans. Mount Longhu had been a tough nut to crack, but in the end, they had all been killed. No one wanted to become the second Mount Longhu. After Yi Qinghan killed Mount Longhu, he disappeared. It was as if he had never appeared. He didn't make a move for 2 consecutive days. However, the quieter it was, the more silent the plain became. No one knew who his next target would be. Everyone was in danger, and every bush and tree was an enemy. This was especially true for the direct descendants of the 3 great powers. Some of the more cowardly ones were so scared that they immediately fled their clans and drew a clear line between themselves and their clans. They would rather be wanderers than face that madman Yi Qinghan. 2 days later, the territories of the 3 forces were completely paralyzed, and there were barely any signs of life on the streets. The spies of the 3 parties had already been sent to their limits, but they still could not find Yi Qinghan. It had been 4 days, but it was like Yi Qinghan did not exist, yet it also felt like he was everywhere. Damn it, a bunch of trash. Is it so hard to find a person? The sacred Qilin roared in rage and shattered a mountain peak with a single palm. Compromise. My God's Treasures Pavilion can't take it anymore. Now that the hearts of our clansmen are scattered, there are already people taking advantage of the situation to rise up and snatch our customers. If we don't open for business in 2 or 3 days, all the customers will be snatched away. The old monster of the Z family was the first to give in and chose to compromise. The ancestor of the Hollow Spirit sect and the sacred Qilin were so angry that they were trembling all over. Not only had their 2 chief disciples died, but Yi Qinghan had recently killed more than a dozen of their subclans. If they compromised now, they would be throwing away their old faces. But there was no other way. They could only compromise. Open the passage to the border river and ask the experts of the voracious wolf realm to cooperate. Let Yi Qinghan fall into the trap himself. This time I will catch a turtle in a jar. The old man of the Z family sneered. The border river quickly received the notice and opened a gap. The army was very far away, but they could gather at any time. Once Yi Qinghan got close to the border river, he would definitely not be able to escape. The border river was sealed, and the news spread quickly. Many people thought that the 3 major forces had compromised. But Yi Qinghan sneered. He didn't go anywhere. He hid in a God's Treasures Pavilion near the Hollow Spirit sect. The God's Treasures Pavilion had long been empty. The strong had fled, and the weak had also left. No one would have thought that he was hiding in his own nest. Soon, Li Sha sent a warning to not get close to the border river. It seems that I haven't killed enough. Yi Qinghan licked his white teeth with the tip of his tongue, revealing a sinister cold light. He looked at the map on the table. The Hollow Spirit sect's main sect was 3,000 miles away. I don't know where that old thing is now. Isn't it a bit risky to take the risk to kill his main sect? Although the divine bird was bold, it didn't dare to take such a risk. A great man must be ruthless. They probably won't think that I'd dare to attack their main sect. Their sect's defense is the most lax. I'll set a fire and leave. When they react, I'll be gone. Yi Qinghan sneered. His divine fire was now close to rank 16. If he wanted to extinguish it, he would probably need an old monster like a half-step lord to personally take action. All he had to do was make the old monster unable to chase him. Yi Qinghan sped through the night, approaching the Hollow Spirit sect. The Hollow Spirit sect was tight on the outside but lax on the inside. A large number of powerhouses were patrolling the perimeter, forbidding strangers from approaching. However, the interior was still extremely lax. Yi Qinghan used his space rule to the extreme and dodged continuously, avoiding the powerhouse's eyes and ears. He approached the foot of Hollow Spirit Mountain. The Hollow Spirit sect was confident of its strength, so they didn't even activate the sect guarding formation. Cooperate with me and drown the main mountain directly. Yi Qinghan summoned the divine bird, the fire raven, and the golden raven. Although their attacks weren't very impressive, their ability to breathe fire was not bad. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan soared into the sky, bathed in flames all over, exploding like a scorching sun. Yi Qinghan transformed into a dragon and breathed out a mouthful of fire. Even the void was ignited, igniting with a single touch. He quickly charged toward the main sect. The divine bird, the fire raven, and the golden raven rushed toward the sub-peak and breathed out a mouthful of fire, igniting everything in all directions. The divine dragon swung its tail and charged toward the perimeter with a monstrous blaze. It destroyed the powerhouses on the perimeter and left with heaven evasion. The flames above the hollow spirit sect soared into the sky. Many disciples were drowned in the flames, letting out heart-wrenching screams as they were instantly burned into nothingness. Tell those 3 old fogies that if they still don't behave, then they can wait for me to wipe out their families one by one. I have plenty of time. I'm just afraid that they can't afford to play. Yi Qinghan left behind these cold words before he left. In the blink of an eye, he tore through the void and vanished once more. The 3 powerhouses were seething with anger at this moment. Half the sky of the Hollow Spirit sect had been burned down. The Hollow Spirit sect's Grand Elder had only just returned. After putting out the fire, the sect was already in a mess. The treasury was almost burned down. Yi Qinghan, this old man and you are irreconcilable. The Hollow Spirit sect's Grand Elder raised his head and roared. He wanted nothing more than to crush Yi Qinghan into pieces. The faces of the Z clan's old monster and the sacred Qilin changed. They directly rushed back to their respective families, afraid that Yi Qinghan would run to their headquarters and set fire to half the sky. The Z clan's old monster finally couldn't take it anymore. He gave up on the idea of killing Yi Qinghan, completely open the seal of the World River and make him scram out of the clear moon plain. The sacred Qilin also didn't dare to provoke Yi Qinghan. He was a madman. It was wrong to say that he was a good person. When he killed, he would even kill children. He wouldn't be lenient. They really couldn't afford to offend such an enemy. The army of the World River retreated. The 3 powerhouses almost knelt down and begged Yi Qinghan to quickly leave the plain. Chapter 763. The seal on the border river was opened, and they waited quietly for Yi Qinghan to leave. Although the 3 powerhouses hoped that Yi Qinghan would leave, they did not let their guard down. The hidden spies were mobilized, trying their best to track down Yi Qinghan's whereabouts. Li Sha sent people to the border river to investigate. After confirming that there were no more ambushes, he sent a message to Yi Qinghan. After receiving the message, Yi Qinghan heaved a sigh of relief. He could finally leave. He lowered his head to look at Qin Wenin, who was sleeping soundly in his arms, and shook his head with a bitter smile. He had not even raised his own son or daughter like this, yet he had raised someone else's child. Let's go home. Be my daughter-in-law. Yi Qinghan smiled faintly. He tore through the void and shuttled through alternate spaces, charging in the direction of the border river. The spies were moving at high speed. Although the spatial fluctuations were small, they could not hide from the hyperspace-exalted gods. Yi Qinghan's whereabouts were gradually captured. The 3 powerhouses received the news, but they did not give chase. Follow him and dig out his roots. I'll pay him back tenfold. The 3 powerhouses' views were almost the same. They did not kill Yi Qinghan now. Instead, they wanted to follow the clues and find out where Yi Qinghan's organization was. Yi Qinghan sensed the powerhouses following him, but he did not say much. Now that the 3 half-step lords could appear at any time, he did not want to be entangled. He sped up and charged toward the border river. The Pishio and Yi Qinghan worked together and doubled their speed. They quickly shook off the spies behind them. Half a day later, they approached the border river passageway. The army was 10,000 miles away from the passageway. Yi Qinghan disappeared in a flash and entered the greedy wolf dimension. After leaving the dimension, Yi Qinghan had no more reservations. He tore through space and fled. He had wandered around the greedy wolf dimension for 30 years, so he was very familiar with the dimension. Therefore, it only took him 3 days to cross the entire dimension. After passing through the passageway, Yi Qinghan entered the mythical plane and headed straight for the god Extinction Mountain range from the southern wasteland. Back then, the second sorcerer god had told Yi Qinghan that as long as he could conquer a mythological existential plane, he would naturally gift him with even better secret techniques. That would obviously be a main god-level secret technique and a main god-level divine weapon. Now was the time to fulfill his promise. In addition, Yi Qinghan wanted to know Qin Wentian's identity, so he did not return to the crazed manor immediately. Ultimate God Mountain was still Ultimate God. Nobody dared to enter Ultimate God Mountain anymore. Back then, Supreme Venerable Greedy Wolf and the 9 linked Mountain Masters' abilities were almost invincible. They were almost on par with half-step lords. However, they had been cursed until they were half dead. They had died tragically at Yi Qinghan's hands. If anyone else entered, they would have no chance of surviving. Yi Qinghan returned without a sound. He directly rushed into Ultimate God Mountain and retraced his steps. He rushed into the valley and activated the mechanism, once again returning to the second sorcerer god's hiding place. "You're back." A mummified corpse stood up from the coffin. It was completely lifeless. Its hoarse voice seemed to have come from the depths of hell. It was incomparably terrifying. Yi Qinghan's hair stood on end. The second sorcerer god had already exceeded his imagination. "Senior, this junior has already conquered the mythological plane and found a child. I can't see through his physique, so I'm here to seek guidance." Yi Qinghan had never been afraid of others. However, when facing this old monster, he did not dare to raise his head and look directly at him. Perhaps the first time he met him, he did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, only when he met him for the second time did he realize how terrifying he was. Thump, 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 Yi Qinghan's heartbeat quickened. It was as powerful as the heart of a dragon, pounding against his chest. The second sorcerer god's shriveled eyes were deep, like the boundless Milky Way. It was extremely turbid, making it impossible for one to see through the illusions. At this moment, he stared at the unconscious Qin Wentian in Yi Qinghan's embrace as he asked in a low voice, "What's so special about her?" Just based on her appearance, the second sorcerer god was actually unable to see through her physique. He only felt that there was something different about her. She doesn't have any cultivation base, but she can wantonly pass through wooden doors and metal plates. Now that she has some true energy, as long as she can see where she wants to go, she can instantly reach it. Yi Qinghan spoke honestly. "She doesn't have any cultivation base?" The second sorcerer god's voice was filled with emotions. He spoke in a hoarse voice, "Wake her up, this old man wants to take a look." Yi Qinghan unsealed Qin Wentian's sleeping acupoint. She opened her eyes in a daze and rubbed her stomach as she spoke in a pained voice, "Uncle, I'm hungry." Yi Qinghan hurriedly took out a divine fruit and passed it to her, allowing her to replenish some of her qi and blood. She was still a child after all. She wasn't like the priestesses who didn't need to eat to extend her life. Qin Wentian swallowed the divine fruit in a few mouthfuls. She turned her head and looked at the second sorcerer god. She was so frightened that her face turned pale. She did her best to burrow into Yi Qinghan's embrace. The second sorcerer god could tell that Qin Wentian wasn't ordinary. She didn't have a high cultivation base, but she could eat the divine fruit without any restraint. The energy contained within the divine fruit was sufficient to cause the body of an immortal emperor to explode. Yet, Qin Wentian was completely fine. "Let her perform for this old man to see," the second sorcerer god mumbled. It was as though he was recalling the end of the primal chaos era. Demons and gods danced wildly, the great Tao of heaven and earth crumbled. Terrifying monsters could cover the sky with a single hand, shattering the dome of heaven. Qin Wentian shook her head repeatedly. She clutched tightly onto Yi Qinghan's robes, as though she was extremely afraid of the second sorcerer god. Yi Qinghan didn't think too much about it. Who would be afraid of someone like the second sorcerer god? He gently consoled, "Don't be afraid. Senior won't harm you." "Uncle, let's go." Qin Wentian shook Yi Qinghan's robes. This was the first time she disagreed with Yi Qinghan's will. "Take away the item in my hand and you can leave." The second sorcerer god stretched out his withered arm. A metal scroll appeared in his hand, exuding the vicissitudes of the great Tao. It was definitely an item from the primal chaos era. Qin Wentian's hands trembled. Her entire body was trembling. She didn't dare to turn her head to look at the sorcerer god. Yi Qinghan was curious. What was Qin Wenyin afraid of? The second sorcerer god did seem to be afraid of people. But could he be more terrifying than a mountain of corpses? She was someone who had seen countless corpses before, but she had never trembled like this before. Why was she so afraid when she saw the sorcerer god? Wendian, be obedient. Take the item and we will leave. Yi Qinghan gently said. Qin Wenyin timidly turned her head, not daring to look at the sorcerer god. She only stared at the metal scroll in the sorcerer god's hand. She slowly stretched out her tender little hand, and the extent of her trembling increased. Failed? Yi Qinghan was shocked. Such a small matter shouldn't be too difficult for Qin Wenyin. Qin Wenyan's teeth were chattering. She was clearly terrified to the extreme. Qin Wenyin abruptly turned and stretched out her little hand. The metal scroll disappeared from the sorcerer god's hand and reappeared in her hand. She grabbed the metal scroll and held it tightly in Yi Qinghan's embrace. How could she be in the mood to look at the sorcerer god? As expected, this is her inheritance. Kill her. The sorcerer god faintly spoke. What? Yi Qinghan's eyes narrowed. He took a step back with Qin Wenyin. This was unbelievable. Not only did he not nurture such a genius, he even wanted to kill her? Had the sorcerer god gone senile? Do you know of the 10 great primal chaos physiques? The sorcerer god looked at Yi Qinghan as he coldly asked. Yi Qinghan shook his head. What did the 10 great primal chaos physiques have to do with him? What did they have to do with children? Her constitution had a resounding name in the chaos era. It's called the ethereal constitution. It's on par with the heavens and can communicate with spirits. Nothing can stop it. It's shockingly similar to the void Taoist constitution, but there are some aspects of it that exceed the void Taoist constitution. There are also some aspects that are inferior to the void Taoist constitution. Her constitution is indeed very strong. If she's nurtured properly, she can become a lord god in a few hundred years. Unfortunately, she belongs to the demon god lineage. The sorcerer god sighed deeply, but he still smiled. He continued, your luck is not bad. You met the inheritor of the ethereal physique before she rose to power. Otherwise, you might have died in her hands. Chapter 764. The words of the sorcerer god struck Yi Qinghan's heart like lightning. The child he had risked his life to protect was actually an inheritor of the demonic god bloodline. She's just a child. Yi Qinghan took a step back, unwilling to kill Qin Wenyin. What do you know? When an inheritor's cultivation reaches a certain level, their memories will be unlocked and they will understand their destiny. You might think that you can nurture her now, and she might even rely on you. But thousands of years later, you will be mortal enemies. If she wants to kill you, she won't show any mercy. The sorcerer god coldly said. Out of the 10 great battle physiques, 6 of them are from the demonic god bloodline. They all have the seeds of the demonic god's fate. As long as they have one of the 6 great battle physiques, once their cultivation reaches the emperor level, they will activate the seed of fate and obey the will of the demonic god without any reason. This is no longer something that can be resisted by will alone. Give up, destroy this inheritance, destroy this incomparable battle physique, and let the ethereal physique disappear forever. The sorcerer god said in a commanding tone. I'm not one of the 10 great battle physiques, and I won't participate in your battle. I only want to protect this child. I believe that I can change her, or destroy the seed of fate in advance. Yi Qinghan gave a very certain answer. He wouldn't kill Qin Wenyin. Destroy the demonic god's seed of fate? Who do you think you are? Even the Great Father couldn't do it, let alone you. The second-generation sorcerer god laughed maniacally and said with disdain, once the seed of fate is activated, no one can change it. Stop dreaming, this is deeply rooted. No one understands the seed of fate better than me. The Father also planted a seed of fate in the 4 great battle physiques of my clan. When you understand the seed of fate, you will understand that this is irreversible. Yi Qinghan fell silent. He regretted taking the risk to bring Qin Wenyin here. Now he understood why Qin Wenyin was so afraid of the sorcerer god. It was a fear that came from the depths of his bones. How could he not be afraid when he met the sorcerer god before he matured? If you can't bear to kill him, I'll kill him for you. The second sorcerer god's aura changed and killing intent appeared. Yi Qinghan was greatly taken aback. He only had time to unleash his divine might and protect Yi Qinghan with his arms. The second sorcerer god slammed out with his palm, shattering the void. Although that palm seemed slow, Yi Qinghan didn't have the courage to evade. He could only watch on helplessly as the second sorcerer god's withered palm destroyed everything in its path. Force. The second-generation sorcerer god's aura was the will of the heavens. It could not be defied. His opponent could not move, could not dodge, and did not even have the courage to resist. He could only watch as the second-generation sorcerer god attacked. Yi Qinghan's eyes narrowed as veins popped out all over his body. Even his dragon bones were about to break. He bent his body slightly, protecting Qin Wenyin in his embrace. Trash. She's an enemy. Seeing Yi Qinghan trying so hard to protect Qin Wenyin, the second sorcerer flew into a rage out of humiliation. With a single palm strike, he sent Yi Qinghan flying. Boom. Yi Qinghan slammed into a withered mountain. His blood dyed the sand and rocks red. His powerful elemental Dao body almost shattered as the aura of death enveloped his entire body. Hu-hu-hu-da. Yi Qinghan gasped for air. This was the first time he experienced true death. No one had ever given him such an aura of death. This was the power of a core god, or even a power that surpassed the core god realm. Senior, please give me one more chance. I've brought her to hide from place to place and only just managed to escape from another world. It's too much of a pity to kill her just like that. She's still a child, only 4 years old. What does she know? If I kill her now, my Dao heart won't be able to accept it. When she really makes a move against me and the relationship between us has reached a point of no return, I will personally resolve this matter. Yi Qinghan knelt on the ground as he spoke resolutely. You have to understand that when she has a cultivation base, you won't be able to control her anymore. She can instantly disappear from your line of sight, vanish from this world, or even directly traverse the world and enter the upper planes. If you don't kill her now, it's the same as giving the great demonic god a right-hand man. The sorcerer god coldly spoke. This is only the worst-case scenario. Maybe I can turn the situation around and turn her into a sharp sword in my hand, a divine sword that can pierce through the great demonic god's defenses. Yi Qinghan gritted his teeth as he spoke. I've already said, that's impossible. The sorcerer god angrily rebuked. Everything is possible. Everything under the heavens has a turning point. Since I've encountered her, there will definitely be a different outcome. Yi Qinghan's attitude was resolute. He had to protect Qin Wenyan no matter what. What if I don't agree? The second sorcerer god asked without hesitation. Then I won't participate in the battle between you and the great demonic god's inheritor. I will only protect what I want to protect, Yi Qinghan replied with certainty. You have the bloodline of the sorcerer tribe and the 5 elemental Dao body. You even have the chance to develop the 9 revolution Dao body. How can you say such disgraceful words? The second sorcerer god's anger grew as he coldly asked. But I have my own will, and I won't be changed by anyone. Senior, please respect my wishes. Yi Qinghan knelt and kowtowed. The sorcerer god furrowed his brows. He felt that something was wrong. Shouldn't the sorcerer tribe be filled with hatred for the inheritor of the great demonic god's bloodline? Why was Yi Qinghan so calm, even taking the initiative to protect the inheritor of the great demonic god's bloodline? Which bloodline of the sorcerer tribe are you from? Didn't your elders teach you the history of the primal chaos? The sorcerer god coldly asked. I'm not the inheritor of the sorcerer tribe. I just happen to obtain the origin of a female sorcerer tribe cultivator. My body contains her blood essence. That's why you misunderstood my identity. Yi Qinghan had no choice but to answer truthfully. Impossible. Your 5 elemental body. The second sorcerer god's face was filled with disbelief. Yi Qinghan had the 5 elemental body and the bloodline of the sorcerer tribe. This was the most important way to determine whether someone had the bloodline of the sorcerer tribe. Yi Qinghan had both, so how could he not have the bloodline of the sorcerer tribe? My 5-elemental Dao body was formed after birth. I forged it step by step. It's different from the natural 5-elemental body of the sorcerer tribe. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly. He didn't expect the sorcerer god to misunderstand him so deeply. He thought that the sorcerer god would be able to tell and that he was the fated person that the sorcerer god had been waiting for. It turned out that the sorcerer god had been waiting for the wrong person. Damn it! I actually mistook you for someone else. The second sorcerer god was dumbfounded. He had been waiting for thousands of years, but he had been waiting for the wrong person. He had been grooming Yi Qinghan as the inheritor of the sorcerer god. Yi Qinghan was speechless. He didn't expect such a powerful existence to make a mistake. He immediately took the opportunity to say, "Senior, you may have thought that you would never be wrong, but aren't you wrong now? You thought that I wouldn't have the chance to change the outcome. I believe that you will be wrong again." The second sorcerer god looked coldly at Yi Qinghan. His withered body emitted a terrifying aura that almost froze Yi Qinghan. "You were the one who led me astray. Why didn't you say so back then?" The second sorcerer god questioned coldly. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly. He had also misunderstood. He thought that the sorcerer god was really waiting for him and that this opportunity was really his. He didn't expect that it wasn't. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.